Good evening. We want to call this meeting to order. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our statement of values? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so that we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, Assistant City Clerk.
Councilmember Mahan.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hardy.
Here.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Present.
Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Watanabe. And Councilmember Shahal.
Here.
Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
Thank you.
Do you want to read the?
Sorry.
Thanks. That's okay.
AB 23 announcement. Members of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, Sports and Open Space Authority, and Housing Authority are entitled to receive $30 for each attended meeting. Statement of behavioral standards. The City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note that as a presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed, and that use of the gavel indicates all conversations must conclude and everyone in attendance should come to order and attention. Welcome and thank you for your participation.
All right, thank you. The first item on our agenda is the informational report on Councilmember Patricia Mahan's resignation from the City Council. I know we're going to go to Councilmember Mahan, but we'll start with our City Clerk, Hassam Agag.
Good evening, everybody. This is just a very brief informational report that the city received notice of intent to resign effective February 1st from Councilmember Patricia Mahan. And so this is just an informational notice that, or informational report that we received this notice, and that following, per the protocol, the first council meeting after the resignation goes into effect, there will be an item on the agenda which would discuss the options that the council has in terms of filling the vacancy by appointment or whatever else the council decides. So that will be on February 11th. At the February 11th council meeting, we'll have that, that item on the agenda with a full report and options for the council to consider.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Mahan. You'd like to make some comments?
I do, thank you. I believe I have faithfully served the City of Santa Clara and worked for its betterment of our community for more than 23 years. Many times I have been called upon to put the needs of our city above my own, but the time has come now to focus on myself and my family. I would have liked to have made the announcement of my retirement in my own way, in my own time. But I was deprived of that opportunity when the city issued a press release without my knowledge, a release that regrettably included some personal health information. I want to focus on the positive, and to that end I have prepared, in the spirit of David Letterman, my top 10 favorite accomplishments on City Council. Number 10, Mission Branch Library renovation. This is a library I frequented growing up, and it was the same library my son Colin used when he was growing up. It hadn't been renovated in all those years. I was supportive of all the renovations the Library Foundation requested, including the new windows. And now Mission Library is an updated, modern library with a beautiful community room. I was proud to make a personal donation to have the children's reading area named Colin's Corner, the place where he learned his love of books and reading. Number 9, the Senior Fitness Center. Today's seniors are active and health conscious. Having the senior center available for use by our seniors for free adds to the vibrancy of our community by enhancing their well-being. We have managed to keep this service at no cost to our seniors, and I trust it will always remain so. Number 8, the Historic Preservation Ordinance. Since I was first elected to the council in 1994, I had endeavored to have an historic preservation ordinance passed. It took 20 years. With the help of our city historian, Lori Garcia, our Historic Landmarks Commission, and the support of the community, it finally passed. It is so important to preserve Santa Clara's rich history as reflected in its many historic homes and buildings. Number 7, San Tomas Aquino Creek Trail and the Ulastack Natural Area. The Creek Trail was the brainchild of Councilmember Kevin Moore and Lori Garcia, who brought the idea first to our then Director of Parks and Recreation, Earl Carmichael. With the support of our County Supervisor, Rod Deardon Sr., a Creek Trail Committee was formed and the project began. I was happy to support all of the actions needed for the design, funding, and building of the Creek Trail. Clista Sini, wife of our former council member John McLemore, brought to the council the idea of preserving a portion of the old Fairway Glen Golf Course and restoring it to the flora and fauna that originally existed in this valley. Now, thanks to Dennis Dowling and his crew of volunteers, Ulastack is full of native plants, flowers, birds, and critters. I draw these two things together because they are both united geographically and in spirit. Both are now wonderful places to experience nature in the midst of our urban environment. Number 6, electrical deregulation. The 90s were a tumultuous time in the electrical industry. The state had deregulated electrical utilities to give customers a choice. All the experts were predicting that the electrical industry would become only a matter of brokering power. Utility companies should divest themselves of the generation side of the business. Santa Clara instead took a careful study of its generation assets and held on to them. Silicon Valley Power was born, and our city withstood deregulation without any blackouts. Today, Silicon Valley Power provides the lowest cost electricity in the area and is a leader in green energy. Number 5, Kaiser Hospital. When Kaiser decided to demolish the old hospital on Kiley Boulevard and rebuild at Lawrence and Homestead, the move entailed the loss of the last remaining orchard in Santa Clara, but resulted in a world-class, award-winning hospital and medical facility. I was so impressed by the new facility that my family joined Kaiser's family. I supported the project and oversaw many of the design elements on the Architectural Review Committee, including moving the parking garage away from the residences. Little could I know how many times Kaiser would save my life. Number 4, Rivermark. This was the first major comprehensive development in Santa Clara, overtaking the old Agnews campus. Council worked very hard at the time to design the best neighborhood possible with adequate retail and commercial uses and housing of all types, from very low income, below market rate units, ADA accessible units, affordable and market rate rentals, and single-family residences. It has become one of the most successful developments in Santa Clara. Number 3, Levi Stadium. Led by our city manager, Jennifer Sparacino, our city negotiated the best deal in NFL history, one not likely to be repeated, and one that used no city general funds. Our 2 dissenting council members at the time, Jamie McLeod and Will Kennedy, contributed greatly to the outcome by always questioning everything and pushing us to do better. The stadium has hosted many major sports and entertainment events and recently hosted 2 playoff games due to the 49ers winning season. The presence of the stadium has spurred new development, notably the related project, which will bring more housing, new retail, hotels, and entertainment to the area. Number 2, 6 district elections. Santa Clara had to be dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century to comply with the California Voters' Rights Act. The 28 election proved that 6 district results in making our council better reflect our community. It is important that we continue to maintain the 6 districts to ensure we comply with the Voter Rights Act and make sure that every vote counts. Number 1, South of Forest neighborhood improvements. This project was to me the most important initiative taken while I have been on the council. It brought up to city standards the streets, sidewalks, sewer, and infrastructures in this neighborhood that had been neglected since it was annexed from the county decades ago, leaving substandard infrastructure. The best thing about the project was that our Public Works Director, Rajiv Batra, cobbled together grants and special funding so the project was done at no cost to the homeowners. I remember walking the neighborhoods promising residents that the improvements would be made at no cost to them, and it is a campaign promise I am proud to have kept. I have enjoyed my tenure on the council and regret having to step down before the end of my term. I know great things lie ahead for our city, and Santa Clara's future is bright. It will always be a great place to live. It has been a privilege and honor to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mahan. I think before we have comments here on the dais, I have some public members that would like to speak. We can go to the public first. We have Jeannie Mahan and Bill Davis, and then anybody else that would like to speak, please come forward. Yes, no?
Good evening, and thank you. I'm Jeannie Mahan. Patty, I just want to thank you for the many years of service and dedication to our city. As you already mentioned, many amazing things happen under your watch. I know our dad, former councilman and mayor, is proud of you. I know he's watching over you with love and care every day. We are all proud of you as you fight the good fight with grace and dignity and courage every step of the way. In spite of all odds, you have never lost your spirit and your caring for our city. You have always taken the high road and remained dignified and graceful through all your pain and suffering. I hope you feel the love and support of all your colleagues, your friends, your family, especially John, your husband, who's always there for you. We will all miss your presence on the council. This room will seem empty without you. But we wish you only the best as you continue on this journey. You are in all of our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Jeannie, but I do have to correct, Dad wasn't mayor. That's why he had me become mayor.
Bill Davis, and then anyone else that would like to speak, please queue up.
Hi, I'm Bill Davis. I live in the city of Santa Clara. I've been here for quite a long time now. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Patty for serving the city of Santa Clara, helping with the items that she really helped with, the electrical works, and her father, who served as a councilman too, and she followed in his feet to become a council member, and then became the mayor of City of Santa Clara. And anyway, thank you, Patty. We know her as Patty, but I think her name is Patricia Mahan. Don't want to mess that up anyway.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to speak? All right. First, Patty, I'd like to say thank you for even being here this evening. I know that it's been difficult for you but yet you're here. I personally want to say that I wish you the best as you deal with some of your challenging issues. I know this is a tough time for you and your family, but I also know how strong a person you are and how you have always been able to handle a lot because of your strength, and I think that's what's showing tonight as well. I also want you to know that I'm not the only one up here who wishes you well. All of your colleagues up here do, as well as our city staff and our employees in the city. As you have gone through your top 10 list, it's amazing that we're always looking forward, and sometimes it's amazing we don't look backwards to see all the accomplishments that you have been a huge part of, and a huge part of the fabric of the city of Santa Clara and the history of Santa Clara. You were very much involved in all of those things, and those are even a small portion of all the many things that you have been involved in. We know you've done a lot for our city, and we know that, and we really appreciate your service to Santa Clara for all these years. So thank you very much on behalf of myself and the council. Councilmember Chahal.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Mahan, I learned so much from you, and I served with you on several committees, and like I can name a few, like I served with you on architecture committee, and then I served when we were preparing the historical preservation ordinance. I was one of the members of that. And then I served with you on MCCF board outside of this. And on all these occasions, I was newbie when I just started for volunteering or other stuff. I learned so much, not only from you, from so many of my colleagues over here. So, and one thing I learned, like whenever we had a difference of opinion, it was never a personal thing. It was done in a meeting, and that's it. And we had difference of opinion on architecture committee, but that's okay. And that's what I learned, that okay, these things are issues which are we deal with the ordinance and other stuff only. Your accomplishments, as you mentioned, I was not even aware of so many, but now I'm aware. I knew you had accomplished so much, but yeah, it's good to go back to so many of those. And not only me, I think our residents should be proud of what you have done for our city. And you have spent so much of your family time for the city directly, and we are proud of that. And your willpower, like I would commend you for that. You have seen so many ups and downs, and you have always stood strong. Like I have never seen you not being cheerful. Like you have stood like a rock, and that gives hopes to person like me. Like always be cheerful, whatever the circumstances are. And one other thing I would like to point out, when I was running 2016 election, and we too were the candidates, and I remember having a meeting with you just before filing the papers, and you were so positive, and I was just trying to tell you I'm running and why you are running. You already had, but we had a great discussion, and I appreciate that openness, and I accepted that. And even during that election, it was so cohesive. Like I never even considered ever that you are trying to pinpoint something as an opponent to me. And I learned every process of that. I learned so much. And I thank you for your service, and wish you best of health and retirement for your future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember O'Neill?
Thank you. Patty, I admire your courage in coming tonight. I know that you're still recovering, and it takes, I'm sure, all of your strength to be here. But so that's one of the qualities that I want to mention. You're an incredibly strong woman, and with all those things that you took on, I always knew that you were doing what you always thought was best for the people of Santa Clara. You've been incredibly dedicated to that, and you've sacrificed a lot to do what you have thought is best for the people of Santa Clara. And you mentioned your love of libraries, but I also wanted to mention, I think one of the things that we shared was your support of other arts, particularly the visual arts, the Triton Museum, some of the discussions we've had about that. And also the Sister Cities program. I think you have been invaluable in providing support from the council to advance the work with our sister cities. And so I know you have many friends in Izimo and Queensborough also. So we will miss you, but we can always take inspiration from the fact that you have stayed the course and have put your all into a life of service in your profession as an attorney, and also here for the residents of Santa Clara. So we wish you all the best, and we look forward to seeing you out soon, maybe out at the Mission Library, enjoying the spring sunshine that we look forward to soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember Hardy?
I want to be really clear. I'm not crying. My eyes are sweating. Patty and I, we met in 1992 when our kids were little. And we worked on several projects together. And sometimes we worked against each other. But because of Patty, your grace and your dignity and your integrity, we never let it get between our friendships. And I appreciate that. You not being on the right side of me is going to feel like there's a big hole. I think no one in this room more deserves the title of survivor than you. And the plan is for you to get some rest and come back swinging and helping us out whenever needed. Because I've been a part of a lot of those projects you talked about. And I don't know if you remember our conversation about a big tree in Agnews and the monkey puzzle tree. And I still drive past there and the kids call it Mom's monkey puzzle tree, but it was Patty's idea for me to get them to move something, so we saved one of the bigger trees in Santa Clara. And I thought back of a lot of some of my good ideas came out of conversations we've had. And I appreciate that a lot. And you up here will be missed, but we plan to see you at every other thing, because I can't think of a city gathering where we haven't run into each other.
Oh, yeah, I'll still be around.
So
And
thank you.
One of the things I have to add, Karen, was your work, hard work. Actually, you did it almost single-handedly to defeat the card room. And at that time, we were on the same side.
And that's how we got to be friends.
Yes. And I do thank Teresa for coming to visit me in the hospital and bringing her beautiful homegrown camellias. It's a flower I have never had any luck with, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Mahan, I would just like to wish you Godspeed and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless there's something you'd like to say, Councilmember Mahan, I just need a motion to note and file if you'd like to make some additional comments.
No.
Okay. Motion to note and file the report. Motion second to note and file. Please register your vote. How do you vote, Councilmember O'Neill? Yes, okay. See, she's struggling, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Councilmember Mahan, will you be?
Yes, thank you. I request that I be excused from the remainder of my last meeting of the city council. I'll go home and watch you on video.
At least you'll get paid for it, okay? If we can give her a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. All right. The next item we have is a study session, Census 2020, update, communication, and outreach plan. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Kendra Davis. I'm a management analyst in the City Manager's Office. I'm here to give you a very brief update on what the city's been doing and a little information about some regional efforts that have been happening in the Santa Clara County and beyond Bay Area. So with me, I have Ray Mueller, who's a partnership specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. He has been very active in partnering with the city and a lot of local jurisdictions in getting education and outreach to the communities and to a lot of community groups, particularly in Santa Clara. So I'm going to open the floor to him, and he'll give you a little bit of background on the census itself, and then we'll go into some more Santa Clara specific information.
Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am generally very jovial, so please do not take my wit that I try to come across with as any thing against what's just happened. That was a very emotional
I know.
moment.
Yes.
As a 20-year cancer survivor myself, I wish her well. Again, my name is Ray Mueller, and I am a partnership specialist with the United States Census Bureau. This is my third census. I did this in 1990. I did it again in 2010, and that's when I first became a partnership specialist. And then I've done it this time because they asked me to come back. This is a very important part of what we do. We spend about a year and a half in advance of the census day preparing the road to census, so that when we get to the point where we're asking people to do their job and take part, there's a smooth path for them to follow. Now, I'm going to go through a few slides here relatively quickly, but I have provided them in, I believe you've been given paper format or electronic format of your choice, so you can go back and refer to them if you need to, and my information is on there if you need to get questions. But I do want to be cognizant of the time, so I'll be a little bit quick on some points. Feel free to raise a hand if you'd like, or if you'd rather, we can do questions at the end. So, first of all, I do want to cover a couple of very important points. Why do we do the census? Because it's in the Constitution. And it's not just in the Constitution, it's within the first 5 sentences of the Constitution. It was that important. We count every 10 years, every person that is residing in the United States. We count them one time, and we count them in the right place, preferably where they live. Now, how will we be able to respond? This is something that's a little bit new. We have added the internet to our decennial census. So this year we're anticipating that about 75% of the population will be able to respond to that in the first wave, on the internet, by phone, or at one of our questionnaire assistance centers where they'll get some assistance in person. There will be paper forms printed, however, not nearly as many as in the past, and I'm sure many of us can appreciate that. We will also only be using those as needed. So for instance, in those neighborhoods where they don't get regular mail delivery, do not have an actual postal address, we will go and visit those homes. If we don't find a person there, we'll leave a form for them to fill that out. So, we will also be using those as follow-up later down, and I'll show you a little bit about that. Please note there will be 12 languages plus English and TDD available for the online electronic portions of this survey. Now, confidentiality is the biggest question that we have when we talk about this situation. Everyone is worried about the safety of their information. I do want to make it absolutely clear that if we share any information, it is a $250,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison. I do not intend to spend my time in jail for anyone. If you would like to go through the fine print, it is there. If you get the electronic version, you can click on those and actually go to the specific points. But the important thing to know is that in World War II, the data was required by the executive branch in order to create some of the internment that occurred. In 2 years following the World War II, the executive and legislative branches got together on something and actually created Title 13. Title 13 protects our data for up to 72 years. No one will know your name associated with the information that you have given. We're like a giant vacuum. We will gather the information. We'll gather information from INS. We'll gather information from the driver's license bureaus. It all goes into a big cylinder and spins around, and we spit out this nice, clean data with no actual personally identifiable information involved. Okay? Now, I did say 72 years. That is because at the time that this was decided, that was the expected life expectancy. You can look at the censuses from 1940 and all the way back to 1790, which was when we first took the census. If you want to do genealogy, by the way, that's a good resource. Who are hard-to-count populations? I believe if everybody looks at this, you will find somewhere on there, someone you know, maybe even you, fits one of those qualifications. There is one in the middle at the top I'd really like to make sure you understand. The most undercounted population in 2010 was children under 5. Over 1 million of them were not counted. And we can find a variety of reasons. The term big data was really big then. And putting their children's name into big data was a concern for some folks. We believe also children that were living in 2 houses and they don't speak to one another. There's all kinds of possible reasons. However, we're working with First 5 here in the county and the Santa Clara County Office of Education to make sure we're doing outreach to those children that are in the pre-K years and to their families as well. And we have a variety of outreaches to each of these groups. And if you'd like more information, I'll be happy to share that with you. How and when will we invite you? On March the 12th, we will send a whole bunch of invitations out by mail to those addresses that have mail. And can anybody tell me who will address it to at the house? This is a pop quiz.
Head of household.
There we go. We don't use personally identifiable information, so it will not have a name, and we will not be antiquated and say to the homeowner or to the husband. I had that response from someone else here in this county, or in this city, actually. So we do send it to the household, so it doesn't matter who's living there, if the homeowner is there, if there's a renter there, if there are people that are just shacking up. When it gets to the mailbox, it's whoever's living there at that time. Now, on March the 12th, again, the website will open up. People can go ahead and start responding if they wish to early. Census Day is April 1, so if your household is stable, go ahead and do it. If you have a baby on the way that might be born before then, you might want to wait so they get counted in their first census. March 16th through April the 27th, we will continue to send out little pieces of paper. And as you'll notice on the April 8th, it does say a paper questionnaire will be included for those households that have not yet responded. After the 27th, we are going to start sending out humans. Those humans will be paid $30 an hour. Now, there are 2 sides to that. If you want to earn $30 an hour, that's great. If you're a taxpayer, do you want to spend $30 an hour to have somebody come out and do your census for you? Just some thoughts to put out there. The way that we'll be doing that will include a variety of languages. You'll note that there are 12 primary languages that will be available on all of our outreach for internet self-response and phone questionnaire assistance. Language guides and video and print will be available in up to 59 non-English languages, and you can see that list there. There are many that I did not even know what they were. So please feel free, if you know somebody that knows one of those languages, to help them reach out and get the copy. You can actually go online and watch video in every one of those languages to assist someone if they just have an English form. They can go ahead and fill it out with somebody on a video that will explain how. Okay. Operation schedule. This is very important to a city and an executive level. Please understand that some of these are, well, it's a government operation. The largest peacetime operation ever in the United States. So please understand that some of these things will be just a bunch of letters to you. But GQAC is Group Quarters Advance visit, we'll say. There's another word for it. But we're going to go out and start looking at the group quarters that would include places like Santa Clara University if there are housing, advanced or long-term housing for folks in healthcare, any sort of dorm situation, prisons, jails. We're going to do advanced visits to those to see how we're going to enumerate them. We enumerate with the management of those facilities, helping us make sure that we get everybody that's there. TL advance, that's temporary locations for those members of our community that are unhoused or who are in their vehicles. We are relying very heavily on the cities, specifically your police departments, to help us create a list that has all of those locations. We're also asking that you speak to your police departments and ask them to abate on some of the things they would normally do with homeless populations for that week or so, so that we can leave them stable and be sure we get them counted. Don't do any clean outs of any particular areas at that time. It would be really nice. This is some information that you'll also be able to get through your liaison, Kendra, who's been attending meetings and hearing all of these facts. SBE, that is service-based enumeration. That would be any facility where people are receiving services. This is, again, those extended care facilities, people that are in a transitional facility where they're all in one place, but they're receiving services jointly. Now, the e-response, April 1 to May 1. So that is where we were hoping everybody will have responded. And then we go into ETL, and that one is I won't even answer that because I don't know. But the last one I know is group quarters, and that's, again, where we go into group quarters enumeration, and we will actually go out to those colleges, universities, and sites and work with them either by giving them forms for people to fill out or sending out an enumerator to do it on electronic. So this is usually one of the more important slides. I'm more than happy to talk more about it if you have further questions. Now, partnership strategies, this is important for you to know. We do have a variety of things that we have been doing now for, again, over a year. 10 years ago, there were 20 of my team. This year, we currently have 5. So the difference, however, is the state and the city and the county have done a great deal. The partnership program nationally was about $540 million, as the state of California did almost 1/3 of that amount themselves in addition to what we're doing. So the county here has had an incredible Office of the Census. City of San Jose, your city, several of the cities have actually been working in advance. When I came on board, actually, she tracked me down for a meeting and laid out what y'all were doing. It was awesome. I didn't have to do anything. I was like on autopilot. We were able to participate in the Art and Wine Festival. We were able to participate in the float that you were all kind enough to be on for the
We were
Parade
on
of
it.
Champions.
We were on that float, yes.
We really appreciate that. Having the census messaging around you makes a big deal. And all of that, again, was Kendra. So please, thank you. The different things you see here are things that we're doing. So we do have the complete count committees, which is Kendra is a part of that. There is a complete count committee for the county and then several subcommittees. We attended one this morning, in fact. There is work with nonprofits and such. Some of those ideas. I just did a speaking engagement at the SES Hall. And in fact, there's a significant Portuguese population in Santa Clara.
Really?
But if
Really?
you look it up,
Wow.
it says 0 for 2010. So they're telling people
0?
to make sure they write down in race in their when they're asking the ethnic background, there's a write-in. Make sure you write it in. So they want to make sure, and that's actually a national campaign. And we're working with various people. While I'm sitting here, I got an email from Anna Vargas Smith who wants to do another one.
It's right behind you. She's following you. Yes.
There you are. Hello. She wants to do a happy hour version. I'm looking forward to that one. So we'll be doing that at the hall. Bar will be open. So please be prepared to make sure you invite people to that event. The idea is that we get the information across to them in advance. We need to touch people between 5 and 7 times so that they will just answer when they get that mailing. Now, sorry, I want to go back because, wait a minute, it only goes forward. There we go. The one that I want to make sure that I get to is all the way down the bottom. There are some dates there. Statistics in schools. We are working with your school district to make sure that we reach out to the schools that are in those hard to respond area, low response areas. And I'm doing that this week, so if you have any questions on that, we'll be happy to talk to you more about that. There is an entire program called Statistics in Schools that is evergreen, that is available all the time, not just census years. It includes curriculum for pre-K all the way up through ESL and adult ed. So if you know anybody that's in those positions, the ESL classes that are being done, we got some great curriculum you can drop in. Mobile questionnaire assistance will be available in March and May. Media did start on the 14th of January. And finally, the reason I'm here, trusted voices. The community voted for you. They trusted you to be their voices. And we're asking you as the trusted voices to make sure that they get this message. I work for the United States government. I work for a government that is under question by many people. I could talk for hours, and some people will never hear me, but they'll hear you. So please make sure that you understand the messaging and ask me any questions you have so that you can tell them about it. Next up, who does that? Who are those humans? We pay them $30 an hour. The basic requirements being 18 years of age, valid Social Security, U.S. citizen, valid email address, and they must be able to do the application online. We do not do an in-person process. Please note it is excellent pay, flexible hours, paid training, temporary positions. These are evenings and weekends, so you can work them around your other schedule. So if you already have a day job, we have a variety of teachers' unions that have been put out to their teachers as some extra money. If a person manages to fit in 20 hours a week for about 8 weeks, that's several $1,000s. Actually, 25 hours a week for the 8-week engagement would be $6,000. So if you know somebody that's in your neighborhood, you might want to talk to them. We are required to hire within the census tract, so I want you to think of a 2-block radius around your house. And if you're not going to be the person in that 2-block radius, think of the person that should be counting your neighbors, because we do want to hire from those areas first. You can think of that roommate that's not paying their bills, or that guy over there that's so busy watching you he doesn't have anything else to do, then he can go out and do something else. Okay? Or girl. Please help us share that messaging. The place to apply is 2020census.gov/jobs. We are already training the management level, which are being paid $33 an hour. We will be training enumerators starting on the 3rd of February all the way through mid-May. And we are asking for assistance of organizations like yourself because we require training spaces. We will be training over 4,000 people in this county between now and May 15th. We need to do, in some cases, hundreds in a day. So we're doing like 40 different rooms for one particular training, and we need to get those rooms from wherever we can. If you know of a space that might be available for a week, doesn't have to be for all of the weeks, just any one week. We do also need computers, unfortunately. I did mention the budget's a little different this time. So if you have a space that has computers, a computer learning lab, something of that nature that you know of, if somebody has contact at the college, that would be helpful. We'll be happy to set them up with our folks at our local ACO, which is Area Census Office. All right, next up, next steps. We're going to ask you to pass a resolution in support of the decennial census because, again, as trusted voices, when you do that, it makes it clear to every citizen in the city that you are behind this effort. We want you to share info to constituents about the ease, safety, and importance of participating. And I didn't touch on the importance, but I'm going to tell you, it is about money, power, and justice. It's like a little telenovela. $675 billion a year will be divided for the next decade based on population. Our representation in Congress will be determined based on population. Redistricting, including your own brand new just drawn districts, are going to happen in 21 based on new population. So please make sure everybody gets counted so they can be part of that whole story and make sure that they're counted so that they can shape the future of Santa Clara. Please post in your social media. Anybody got a camera? Can you take selfies now? Okay. It was worth a try. Anna, please. There we go. Get a picture of us, would you? Share info about census jobs. Just so you know, when I did theirs, they were like live streaming me to Facebook. It was like the first time ever. Finally, make sure that everybody in your own home is counted. By everyone, I do mean everyone. If they are visiting on a visa and they're going to be here for more than 6 months, then they belong in that census. The defining term is, where does a person live for 6 months and a day? And that's where they get counted. So if you have students, they get counted at college because they're there for more like 8 months. If you have folks that are snowbirds, which house are they in more, right? That's the basics. Are there any questions that I can answer for the council?
I have a question, Ray. Thank you for that presentation. That was very interesting. People are concerned about people coming to their doors and what do these census takers look like? And how are we going to be able to show our community what these people are going to look like and what credentials are they going to have? Because everyone's worried about their safety now and, you know, people that may take advantage of what's going on with the census to do other, you know, nefarious things. So what are they going to look like? And
You and me.
pardon me?
You and me. Hopefully, it's
But
going to be one
they're
of their
gonna
neighbors,
carry
for starters.
something,
So it looked
or-
like, that was the question.
Okay.
What are they going to carry? There will be a badge that they will have, and that badge will have a logo on it from the Bureau. It doesn't look like my badge, so showing you mine wouldn't help. They will have a black briefcase that will have census logo on the side. They will have a pad in their hand with the census form, and they will fill out the form with the individual. If a person has a question, this is a place where you can be helpful. When you're putting out any bills or any mailings to your constituents the month before, you can put in a line that if you are concerned about who's at your door, call, and there will be a number provided. The idea is that if somebody comes to your door and you don't think they're a census person, you take a look, ask them to see their badge. If they refuse, you can right off the bat, no, that's not us. If they ask to come into your home, it's not us because we don't go inside the house. Right? If they ask you for social security number or your driver's license number or a credit card number or anything other than your phone number and house number, then it's not us. You will know if you're giving out information like their DoorDash, it's not us. Because the person does have to give more information to DoorDash to get a pizza delivered than they do to participate in this. As far as that, you know, they'll be just like any of the rest of us. I did do this in 2010. Some of the time I was an enumerator. And most people are very willing to be involved, but those ones that aren't are the ones that we need you to help us reach now.
And you've identified areas of Santa Clara that didn't participate as much in the 2010
We did.
census, so that we know the undercounted areas?
We did.
Okay.
And in fact, any one of you can go onto the census.gov website. There are data tools. You go to our data tools. There's one called ROAM, R-O-A-M. And you can go in there and you can pull up the City of Santa Clara, and you can go down to tracks. And when you pull up the City of Santa Clara, it's going to show you a puzzle in different colors. You go to the darkest color, and those are the neighborhoods that were the lowest response in the past.
And how many workers are you looking at coming from the city of Santa Clara? How large are
I
these
can't break that
tracts?
down
Okay.
because it is going to be based on need.
Okay.
We are hiring, as I mentioned, about 3,000, well, about 4,000 total because there's 2 offices. Sunnyvale office covers Santa Clara and 3/4 of San Jose, as well as the other collar cities.
Okay.
And then the San Jose office has like 1/4 of San Jose in the South County. So between the 2 of them, we'll be hiring 4,000 total.
Okay.
So I can't really give a number to the city.
Okay.
But what I can say is that if people don't apply, we will have to bring people from out of the city. So the more people from within the city that apply, the more likely we'll be able to hire one of them for one of those spots. There are background checks, so we do want to make sure that's clear. And there are veterans' preferences. So anyone who's a veteran does get interviewed before anyone else in the stack. Anyone who is active military or a spouse also gets that same benefit.
We want to make sure we give this information to our community. These are some great job opportunities, at least temporary job opportunities. Vice Mayor Hardy, and then Councilmember Davis, and then Chahal.
I had a quick question. You talked about you can do it online now. You also mentioned about a computer. How easy would it be to answer the census questions on a phone, on a cell phone?
You can do it via your cell phone. It will be your cell phone, your tablet, your computer, whichever device you prefer. There will also be in the Santa Clara Library, how many? So Santa Clara Library System did get a grant, and there will be pads available in public spaces throughout the city because of that grant, where you can go and use those if you don't want to use your phone, because there are some people that won't want to. I would say that the use of a cell phone, it's going to be up to the abilities of the user.
Thank you.
My phone is difficult. Yes.
All right, Councilmember Davis, and then Chahal.
I have to turn this little light on. I'll give you one thing. This is kind of like a weird thing to present to us, but if you don't have the job, a stand-up comedian, you can go next. I think you definitely kept me awake during when you were saying. I think that when we do the census within the city of Santa Clara, that some people are a little scared. I think that was kind of raised here, the badge and how you're going to do this. Is there a process, I guess you're working with Kendra, of informing the neighborhoods where you're going to be? I mean, once we have all the human bodies that will go out there and physically knock on doors. But is there a way that we can say, we're going to be in your neighborhood this week, look out for us, kind of a thing? Is that a good approach to take, or?
We will be more blanketed.
Okay.
We will say that after April the 27th, people will be out in force. Those 4,000 people we've hired will be out in force, and they'll only be going to the houses of people who didn't answer.
Okay.
So
it will be
if-
limited then?
Yeah,
Okay.
if people
All
go
right.
ahead and get it done in March or early April, they won't have to worry about somebody knocking on their door. And I do want to say that the census is fluid, and so to avoid drowning, always be prepared because there's going to be change. One of the things that will occur is after everything is done, we do a QC, and that QC does involve going out to selected addresses and doing a secondary survey. And there'll be we'll be doing publicity around that whole concept, but we do that we don't take the original form and say, did you say this? We go out and do an entirely clean one, and then once it gets to the data facility, they compare, just to ensure that we've got good quality data. So there may be an opportunity where a person will get a visit even though they filled it out, but it'll be later in the year, and we will be publicizing that as well.
And last question, we do have a very, very diverse community and many languages. So are you having success in recruiting those people to go out into the community? Are you successful with the different languages so far?
So I don't get that level of information. I know the
okay.
numbers, and I will say that at the beginning of January, we were only at about 60% of the numbers that we wanted. So we have been on a push for recruiting, and we've been trying to do our best to get the numbers of recruitment or people in the queue. They are doing better. It's been really good. There are a lot of challenges this year. When I did this 10 years ago, I actually got the job because I had just been laid off. Teresa will tell you later.
Okay,
Tell
Teresa,
Teresa.
there's a story there.
Yeah,
okay.
there is. But I'd just been laid off, so I had a job. Many of us had because 2008 hit, and we were all looking for something to do. There are less people looking. Secondly, the voters' choice has people being hired for elections almost at the same time as us and working for that period right when we're trying to get them ready to go out in March and April to do the jobs that we have then. So we are having some clashes there, but we're actually working with them to make sure that their folks know they should go ahead and apply because we'll hire them in after they're done on March the 3rd.
So again, to the mayor's point, what is it that we can do for you?
First, pass the resolution that has been presented this evening, so that
Okay.
I've got that to hold in front of me when I go to the whatever group, whether it's the Chamber of Commerce or the Kiwanis you're supporting. Secondly, let her do her job. She has been brilliant in making sure that you're involved. I would ask that the city, again, any communications that's going out of the city hall, we have one-liners you can drop in. Things like help shape your future, take part. And then it'll have the website for the census. So any email that leaves City Hall, put that at the bottom of your tagline. And I've got a whole series of those, which I think I've shared already, but if not, I will. And you can drop those in anybody's. You can even pick out the ones that are best for you. There are some that are designed to go into bills. So like if you're sending out to the electric company, through the electric company, you want to send out a specific message through there, help us maintain our grid.
Well, they always say you have to hear things 12 times before it actually sinks in. So, and I can't tell her what to do. That's called councilmanic interference, but you can tell her what to do. So, okay, but she got the message loud and clear. I think she smiled.
Oh, yeah.
So, thank you.
She's been working with us fabulously.
Thank you, Councilmember Chahal.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information, and I do have one question. There was a big controversy about the citizenship question. Can you, all those listening over here as on the TV, can you please address that, where we stand on that? Thank you.
So the United States Supreme Court ruled that that question could not go on to the census in this survey. So it is not there. There is no question about citizenship. There is questions about race, ethnicity, age, date of birth, name, and your relationship to whoever person one is, whether person one is the owner, renter, or whomever you choose. But there's nothing about citizenship. And as I mentioned in what I was saying is we do count every resident in the United States, wherever they live, and we count them once, regardless of their station, regardless of their status. So if a person wants to add a question to the census, there is a specific process. It involves getting some level of the government to tell the Census Bureau they need it, like Health and Human Services could tell us that they need that third gender. And between now and 2030, I imagine that's probably going to happen with the pressure from the groups that I'm getting because people want a third gender. So if the Health and Human Services says they need it for these reasons and they can prove it, the Census Bureau will then test out the question in various surveys that we do because we don't go away. We do 130 surveys every year. And so that's something we can test out on one of those others. And by the time we get to the decennial, we'll have that as a question. So if someone wants to tweet about a question changing a year before we're going to take this survey, they can't make that happen.
Okay. Thank you,
Oh, that was on
Councilmember
recording.
Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation, Ray. It's nice to meet you in person. I think we're friends on social
Yes.
media, so it's nice to meet you in person. And thank you for the presentation. Let me ask you, you mentioned that there are 12 languages plus English. What would you say are the top languages?
12 languages will be Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog, Polish, French, Haitian Creole,
Okay,
Portuguese, and Japanese. Those are the 12 top languages.
great. Okay, so we need to try and get more volunteers, or not volunteers, but people to work the census that speak those languages, basically.
So those are the ones that are going to be on the electronic form online, and there'll be phone support for them.
Good.
In addition to that, the other languages, we will have support for them via the glossaries, guides, and their video guides. So there'll be support even if we don't have a staff member to go out and knock on their door.
Great.
However, people who have a second language, that does give them an in to being hired because we frequently need languages in certain areas.
Good, okay, it's a good bonus to have. Okay, and then I know Kendra did put together a lot of wonderful programming, and then I'm glad to see that our libraries have a lot of programs planned as well. Paul is here from our Assistant City Librarian, and so there are a lot of exciting opportunities to go to the library and get your picture taken. I count photo opportunities in the lobby, so that sounds like it's fun and it's a good way to get people engaged. How long after the census is taken, how long does it take to process and get the final census numbers?
We are required by law to turn over data by December the 31st, 2020 to the executive branch, and we're required by law to turn over more in-depth data to the redistricting commissions of the states by March of 2021, and then we roll out the other data as it becomes available. So it does take a long process, about a year and a half to get all of it, but the main number happens by December the 31st, 2020.
Great, okay.
So you'll know what level of population you have as of that moment.
Great. Thank you very much. That's
You're
all I
welcome.
have.
And good to meet you as well.
Thank you. And I have just one last question. When are we getting the resolution that you talk about?
Did I send you one?
Are we doing a resolution or? A draft soon?
Okay.
Okay. So that we can, in March? Okay, so in March. All right, well, thank you very much. I don't see any other council speakers. Would anybody from the audience like to make a comment? Please come forward.
I'm here for Ray and Kendra.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Lisa, council,
Hi.
everybody. I had a great time he's funny, you're right, Debbie. He's really great entertainer because my little Portuguese group at the SES Hall had a fantastic time with them. Yes, He had a lot of information, and he was very attentive. He answered all their questions, and there was hundreds of questions, and a lot of concerns about confidentiality and privacy and citizenship, and he patiently went through all their questions. I'm also excited that this 2020 is a big year for the Portuguese because I'm a area captain for the Portuguese American Leadership Council. It's a national nonprofit organization, and we're officially codified, according to Kendra. So all you have to do on question 7 is write in Portuguese, and we will be accounted for the first time in forever. So I wanted to encourage anyone who's watching tonight that also question 7 doesn't just apply to being Portuguese. You can write up to 6 ethnicities on this one write-in portion. So if you're Irish, German, Polish, Egyptian, Lebanese, it could all go in that one little space. So it's a new and improved census form. So we're really proud of what the U.S. Census has done this year as being more inclusive of everyone who lives in Santa Clara, anywhere in the country. So thank you, Kendra, for a fabulous job, and Ray for a fabulous job. Let's do the happy hour soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Linda Nepper, and I would highly recommend for second languages reaching the people who are in the schools, because they a lot of times speak both English and the language that their parents speak, and they're a good contact.
That's a very good suggestion. Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I speak to that a moment?
Sure.
Because I didn't talk about it much. So Statistics in Schools program is something where we are working with local schools. We do have things that are online available in English and Spanish. And if we have someone that wants to translate any of the documents, they're welcome to do that. We welcome that assistance. And again, the first week of March, there will be a Statistics in Schools week. And what we're hoping is, because that's right before the mail goes out, kids are going to go home and mom's going to say, hey, what'd you learn in school today? And the kids are going to say, I learned about census, right before they get that form in the mail. And there's actually a PSA that's cuter than me doing that you could pull out and throw on your website if you'd like. We do have a YouTube channel for those of you who would like to look it up. We do have some celebrities, including Elmo, talking about the census. And there is a census song, and I would really love it if somebody would look that up and play it as I walk off. It's cute. It's an earworm that you'll never forgive me for, but
I
it's
really
lovely.
think you should take this show on the road. Yes. Keep
I
taking it
am.
on the
This
road.
is.
And we'll have you back again, I think, when we do our resolutions. You can give us another version of the show.
Well, just so you know, I get laid off sometime between June and August.
There's a story in it.
We'll talk
But
later.
I really like the fact you're bringing attention to the census, however you do it, and as engaging as you are. I think it's really fabulous that you're doing it because, as you said, it's so important for our community that everyone get counted. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And is there any last comments you'd like, or Kendra, would you like to make any last
Only
comments?
thing I will say is make sure everybody counts, because we do all count.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray.
Mayor, honorable members of the City Council, we do have a couple more slides, but we don't have to go through them. It's mostly just information about what we've done here in Santa Clara. There is a list in your report of things that we're going to do as well. If you have any feedback or questions for me specifically, please don't hesitate to reach out. As you can see, we have very engaging partners to work with, and we're really working hard to get out into the community of Santa Clara.
And we have the list, and we'll continue to bring this back all the way through the census, so
Absolutely.
to keep it on the top of people's minds. And
Of course.
so, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't think we take any action on that. That's a study session. So next, we're going to go to reports of action taken in closed session. City Attorney?
Council took no reportable action in closed session.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our continuances and exceptions. We have a request to defer information on alternate leasing plans for department stores at related Santa Clara project. Do I have a motion to defer this report? Do we have a date that we're continuing this to, City Manager?
We're working on a date to bring this back.
Okay, so continue it to an unknown future date to be determined. Councilmember O'Neill, you have a comment on the?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
On the continuance.
On the continuance, okay, well, but they are still, I mean, I understand the market's changed. They're not asking to not have to provide any information about retail plans for the project, are they? That's,
Well, are we going to go into the project, or this is a request to
They
continue?
just asked for it to be delayed, but it is underway. We'll work with them on a date, and I can put that through my biweekly report in terms of the
thank you.
proposed
It's
date.
hard to
Okay, I'll
build
second.
a retail project without retail, right? Yeah, so. So there's a motion and a second. Any member of the public want to speak on the continuance? Okay. Motion second. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have our special order of business, which is the recognition of holiday decoration contest winners. So this evening, I'm going to invite the Cultural Commission Chair, Louis Samara, and Vice Chair Jonathan Marinaro will present the 2019 Home Decorating Contest winners and commission updates to the City Council and the public. So welcome.
Thank you for having us, Lisa, the whole council and everything. And thanks, Ray, I think he already left, for warming up the room.
Yes, he did for you. Yes.
He really, you guys should hire him for that job. There you go. So to start with, what we've been doing with the holiday decoration contest is in the early 2000s, the city manager's office started it in the city. And that it was the City of Santa Clara Cultural Commission has sponsored a pilot Halloween home decoration contest as well. This year, the Cultural Commission endeavored to host a community-wide event which featured these 4 categories of Best Residential, Best Neighborhood, Best Business, and a People's Choice. Now, the residents submitted their entries on the city's website between the 26th and December 16th of 2019. We reviewed the entries for the first 2 categories, and the community voted for People's Choice. Winners were announced on social media on the 24th, just in time for neighbors to visit and see the seasonal creativity. And winners received the prized lawn sign. If you go around the community, you can see these. They are like bricks on their houses these days by how many they have won. And of course, the bragging rights have been invited to be recognized tonight. Now, to take a step forward from that, we'll give the Best Residential, with congratulations to the Berner family at 2583 Johnson Place. It was a beautiful presentation. I love how they actually used the whole garage space to it. Great, great house, all put together. And do we have the anybody from the Berner family here tonight?
Going once, going
Johnson
twice.
Place.
Too bad. Next was the Best Neighborhood, which was to the Burdick Lane neighborhood of 4292 to 4392 Burdick Lane. Once again, it was actually a tough one this year for Best Neighborhood. There's a couple that tend to square off against each other. Most notably, I'd say 2 or 3 south of 101 and the one over in Rivermark Plaza that tend to go and handle it back and forth. After that, we have the People's Choice, with congratulations to the Crocker family at 4292 Burdick Lane. They really held the corner for,
What happened to the photo? Do we have a photo?
Oh, no.
We do have.
We have,
Where's the photo?
yeah, we have it on our presentation. I wonder why it's not showing up on there.
Huh.
So what we can do is actually go back, and so you can see it. It's the really bright one on the far left. Sadly, we can't actually go and show everything. Well, and more importantly, it actually goes and wraps around the other corner as well. So they
It's a corner
do,
house? It's a corner?
Yeah, they have a corner house. You can see it's the street that actually wraps around that side. And just a massive display. What I have to say is it's editing that really sold it this year. So being able to put together a really good presentation that draws in things and isn't just everything all at once. So congratulations to all who won this year, and we're hoping to look forward to another year of both Halloween and Christmas decorations.
Great. Do we have any of the winners here with us this evening? We have Robin Burdick. Would you like to take credit for Burdick Lane? You could take credit. You're trying to take credit because they're your neighbors?
Yes.
Okay. I know that we have awards for all of them, so
Well, we did award the Burdick Lane. I'm not sure if you're on the street with them, but congratulations.
No, she's trying, but no, she doesn't, no, it's not going to work. So we'll make sure that we give them their awards, and,
Well, they've got the bragging rights. They already have their plaques. So
yeah, but I
it's on
think we
to-
have a resolution, they're on the table right there for them.
Oh, right there. Well, we'll
Can we make sure
we get it
that
to
they
them.
receive them? Okay, very
course.
good. And thank you to the commission for doing all this work as well. We appreciate it. This is really fun.
You know, it's one of the joys. I mean, we put on great parties, festivals, and stuff, but I really love the competitions just because it gets people in the spirit. So
Yes, it really does. Thank you for that. And I think you have an update from the commission for us, too?
Yes, we do.
All right, go on.
All right, so thank you very much. This is Luis Samara, and let me move over to, like always, we'd like you guys to follow us in Facebook and also visit us in our different areas so you can keep up to date as to what we're doing. And actually, we have a very interesting programming for the upcoming year. We work quite a few months in advance with our staff liaison and with all the different partners to bring you all this different programming. But we also want to thank you for always continuing to fund this kind of activities. And your support means the world, and we'd like to reflect that, to our citizens of the City of Santa Clara. So for the year 2019-2020, we have a full commission. Sometimes we are done one,
Finally,
two.
yes.
Finally, we're shooting on all pistons here. Second recognition for our star liaison, Kimberly Castro. She's the power behind us. And we would like to start by, reminding people that our commemorative month recognition for February is African American History Month. And also the upcoming March is Women History Month. And with that, I'd like to go into our box utility program. So again, it was a long time coming, and we currently have 3 finished projects. And as you can see, there are one in Lafayette and Franklin, the Happiness Around the World, Monroe and Meadowbrook, Saving Water, and Lafayette and Lexington, A Beats Frida. So, we have 2 more that will be completed in May, and we will keep you updated as to how we move forward with the rest.
Louis, do we have the artist names for those boxes?
Yeah,
Do you happen to have those handy? Or?
No, I don't have them handy, but yeah,
I want to make sure
you're
they
right.
get
We need to
credit. They're
mention them.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, one of them is a pretty young artist. So yeah, I think he's number 1. So
Okay.
yeah, we will make a
Make notes so we can give them credit for their work.
I believe we're going to do a presentation once all of them are done.
Okay, great.
We'll come back and do a recap. We're already on our way for the 2020 sculpture exhibit. We're receiving applications all the way through February, and we'll be selecting up to 30 artists, and we're going to display from April to September. And this year, we're including City Hall, Parks and Recs, facilities, and library facilities. So, we're trying to spread it out so people can actually go out and see all these wonderful artifacts that are going to be displayed. So this kind of for the sculpture exhibit comes every other year, so we don't plan it for every year, but we're lucky that we have such a good commissioners who like to, undertake this, like Deborah Panhuan.
And we are actually doing a call out for not just artists, but also judges. So for anybody, member of the community that wants to come and apply, please let us know. We'd love to have you to not just make art, but be able to go through and judge it.
Right.
All right, Friday Night Live, the Triton Museum. So we have 3 events planned so far. On March 6th, we're going to have Broccoli Andy. That's the 3rd year back with us. Every year it gets bigger and bigger. So we have, being able to reach out to, a larger audience. In April, we'd like to mix it up a little bit. This time we invited, since it's kind of jazz festival month, this time we're using a Brazilian jazz just to mix things up. So it should be quite interesting. And then in May, we have Asian Heritage, so we're planning something for that year, that day. All right, concerts in the park. It's through the years, we have been adapting to, what is it that, to the kind of programming that we would like to have for the city and for the different audiences. And this year, I'm happy to report that our Concerts in the Park series will be mainly on Friday nights. That's we usually reach a bigger audience for that day and that time. And, we're going to go back to the north. We're starting the series on the north side like we did this year, well, last year. And we're going to start out with with the Hitman. So we're hoping that this year we exceed our attendance like we did last year. And we're going to have Orquesta Latin Heat back at the Pavilion, Glory, Refugees, and Pop Rock. So, we're hoping that, our viewers will come and dance with us those special days.
I think the Live Oak Park one, and talked to Councilmember Watanabe, was so popular, like thousands, that we need to be prepared. Yeah, you weren't expecting. We'll be better prepared this year for that sheer number of people.
Yeah, so, for that one, we're tackling the different challenges like parking and seeing what other activities we can bring so we can increase the attendership. So it's something that we like to plan. So it was a good event. It was a great event, and it was good. And we're trying to make it better. Street dance. So for those that have been going to street dance, every year we managed to increase the attendership, and this time around we moved it around just so we can, because we were kind of exceeding the space in which we had done it for such a long time. And, it took a lot of coordination from Parks and Recs, and they did an awesome job. And, I was surprised that, we had a bigger dance floor, and it still got full. So, that's, we know we need more lights in some areas, and, we're working on that, but we're definitely, those are the kind of challenges we like to tackle, right? How to make things better, bigger, and attract more people.
And with that concludes our presentation. Any questions you have for us?
I think I'm going to start with Councilmember Davis.
Thank you, guys.
Hi.
Great job, as always.
Thank you.
On the Christmas decoration thing, because we have districts, I wanted to do a suggestion that we kind of work through the districts, a house in each one. It kind of gets a little bit more community pride and spirit going. And I think that if you have one in each one, it kind of will work better, I think, for the community. I know this is kind of at large a little bit, but now that we have to embrace the districts, let's embrace the community a little bit more on that one. And I know that Live Oak and Kathy's issue, and it was very successful, but the dance floor was so tiny. And that's what we heard about. And we were like, you can't help that. You don't know what's going to happen, but that was like one of the things. I just thought that was hysterical. The dance floor was too small. But hey, what are you going to do? And for the street dance in downtown, I know the way it's set up is kind of hard for everybody, but it's almost like, can we move the band into the street so that we have a longer dance floor, so to speak? I know a lot of people do like to sit. Maybe they can sit to the sides or whatever, but that might be a different thing. I don't know, because you have the nonprofits that make money off of this event. So it's kind of like, that space is too small. We outgrew that. We need a bigger space. So I don't know what to tell you, but I know you're going to have your little thinking caps on for this year, but everybody looks forward to everything that you do, and thank you. And thank you for the utility boxes. It seemed to have gone on hold for a while.
Rain.
Yeah, and I look at other cities and their boxes, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what happened? But anyway, thank you for getting that re-engaged again. I think that's about enhancing the beauty of our community, and I want to thank you for accomplishing that. So those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing the fun to Santa Clara. Yes, you're always great for that. So if there aren't, I don't see any other comments from the council, but thank you so much. Is there any member of the public that would like to make any comments about what was presented by the cultural commissioners? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you guys in February for our, next meeting, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this for the city. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you always for the support, and we always look forward to seeing you guys there.
All right.
Thank
Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, next item we have on the agenda is the consent calendar. All items are approved with one motion unless there is a item that the council or the public would like to pull. We'll start with Vice Mayor Hardy.
May I pull 5I, please?
Okay, you're going to pull 5I, which is action on confirming strategic direction for the Civic Center Master Plan. Okay, anyone else from the council? Seeing none from the audience, would any member of the public like to pull an item? So seeing none, is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the balance.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the balance of the consent calendar. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Next, public presentations. Do we have any public presentations from a member of the public on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? City Clerk, do we have any speaker cards for public presentation? We have none. So is there any member of the public that would like to speak on any item that's not on the agenda? Okay, we have no public presentations. Next, we have consent items pulled for discussion. So Vice Mayor Hardy, you pulled the item on the downtown Civic Center or the City Hall Civic Center site, action on confirming strategic direction for the Civic Center Master Plan from the December 17th study session. I got it out. Thank you.
Yes, the reason I pulled this is because I felt it was important for the public to be a little more aware than it being on consent, and that we show the plan and the possibility of the changes we are discussing and hope to be able to pay for a utility building and its relationship to the rest of the El Camino and what is here and kind of the plan. So I thought that was important to show that to the public.
Okay, thank you. Manuel, do you want any comments from our staff on that, Vice Mayor Hardy? Would you like to say something?
Yeah,
Manuel, since you're there.
Yeah, we certainly do have the attachments that we can put up on screen real quick. Alan's working on that. While we do that, I just want to highlight that we did have a very good conversation as part of the study session. And really what we're doing here is consolidating all the discussion we had into some specific action items. And what you have as part of the package is the approach to move forward, as we discussed in the study session, with a phased implementation plan for the utility building in City Hall. What you see in front of you right now is the phase one, which is what and once again, this is just a picture. We're going to work with the consultants to actually really develop what this is, but shows the utility building in the blue on the southern side of the graphic with the existing City Hall in place with the vision. And as we discussed in the staff report, we do think there's opportunities to be able to fund the existing City Hall. We've been looking at the numbers. We'll flesh that out. We do have some limitations for funding for the utility building. We do have limitations for the City Hall building, but we know we have a master plan that would accommodate it in the future. And if we can go to the next drawing. There we go. If we can zoom out, you can see at that point the City Hall is also reconstructed with the initial idea right now that the utility building and City Hall would be next to each other in two different buildings that would allow the phasing to occur. Once again, this is a very conceptual level idea. I think the key ideas are that we have a funding strategy for the utility building. We're proceeding with the phased implementation with the near-term utility building with a vision of a future City Hall and master plan. And also as well with the fact that we're not proposing to lease or sell any city property to implement the program, which was a key idea that came out of the discussion we had as part of this study session.
Thank you. I had one question. I know it was I was the one that floated the idea of, do we need to keep Civic Center Drive there? Can we bring that out, bring the building out to the park? And I know we were looking at that, but I did find in there that there was talk of an increase for utilities, and we do enjoy the best power rates, I know that. But there was one idea floated in there, but I didn't see if there is an increase to help pay for this infrastructure we're going to need. How long is the increase, and is there a cap?
So we're still, there's two things. I do want to highlight that we did put a note in here, and I put about 4 caveats about Civic Center Drive, that we would like to explore the idea if that could be modified, whether it's closed or just changed the way it looks to look at expanding the park. That would require a separate and future council action. It's just an idea that we'll explore as part of the process. So thanks for pointing that out. On the funding strategy, we're still developing those. What we would look would be at bonding for the project using utility rates. And the initial analysis we've done is like a one-time 1 to 1.5% would provide revenue that would be set aside for the facility, and over a period of years, that would fund the building. So it would be a one-time with those revenues set aside for construction of the facility. That's the initial idea on it. We have a lot more work to do on how it eventually would be implemented if we want to proceed that way. If it's a one-time or if it's spread out to a smaller ones over 2 or 3 years. But we do see an opportunity where there is a reasonable way to fund the utility building and address a lot of the issues that we discussed with the existing city hall, the fact that we have people in, which I think is important, we have people working out of closets right now, and we have a number of other issues, but we'll flesh that out. And what we're envisioning is a one-time that would be set aside for that. Now, we could be spread out over a number of years, so it's not a 1.5 at one point, but it could be half over a 3-year period. And I always like to say, yes, we're between, I think, 25 to almost 50% lower than PG&E rates. We're about 48% lower for residential rates.
I appreciate that, and I just wanted this information out to the public so they understood where we were going with this and not just to have it on the consent. So I appreciate it.
And for the public who didn't see it, there's a study session from December of 2017. The video is available, and we provide a lot more detail than just a report today.
Also, I just want to make sure that we haven't approved any funding options at this point. Nothing's been approved. And even the master plan, I mean, we made some decisions that we don't want to sell property, we want to keep property. We've made some overall decisions, but nothing in terms of the specifics of the master plan of the city hall site either. So that map is not what's set in stone because we haven't gotten that far yet. Correct?
Correct. So
Yeah.
I'll just to be
Yeah.
clear for everybody,
Right.
I'll highlight the 4 bullet points of what really we are moving forward with. Is
Right.
Do a complete vision
Right.
of master planning the
Which
Civic
means
Center
big
campus,
up here
the whole
vision,
thing,
not the
right?
down vision.
Yeah.
Yes.
1,000-foot level.
Yeah.
The utility building will be the initial phase of the
Right.
Civic Center. And then we'll look at a build out of a city hall later on. We want to maintain ownership of all the existing public land with no private residential or commercial development. And something that came across very clear, it's that will be no development on Civic Center Park. In addition to that, those were all part of the study session, we did add the exploration of what can happen on Civic Center Drive adjacent to the park between the utility
Correct.
building.
On the street.
These are the same graphics we showed
Exactly.
at the study session. And it's really, this is 50,000-foot level, what something could look like. Really, the next steps are what's coming next. From financial feasibility, you have made no commitments or made any decisions. All we have done at this point is exploring options of the way the building could be funded if we choose to move forward with the plan.
Or situated on the property. I just want to
That's
make sure
correct.
that we haven't made those decisions. So thank you, Vice Mayor Hardy, for pulling this, just to make it clear. But thank you, and well, thank you so much for the report. And is there any other comments from the council? Any member of the audience want to speak on this issue? Please come forward. I don't see any speakers, so is there a motion to, I guess, note and file or take action to approve, just confirming the direction?
So moved.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Okay, motion second. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, for our public hearing, we have action on approval of First Amendment to the City Manager Employment Agreement and resolution to amend the City Manager Employment Agreement and approve and adopt the updated salary plan that includes the classification of City Manager. Is there a report on this or no report? Okay, council. Council members?
Do you want a motion?
Yes?
Yes, okay. All right. Do you want to do it, Kath?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
I was going to just recommend adoption of a resolution approving the First Amendment to the City Manager's Employment Agreement by and between the City of Santa Clara and Deanna J. Santana to eliminate a provision to pay a housing allowance and adjusting the City Manager's base salary to $448,491 effective October 6, 2019, and also authorizing the mayor to execute the amendment and updating the salary plans for the classification of city manager.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilmember Chahal?
Thank you, Mayor. So at the outset, I want to make it clear that whatever decision I'm trying to make on this item should not be tied to the performance of our city manager. She has done a good job since I have been on the council, and I fully respect that. Not that we agreed on all the decisions she made, but having differences of opinion in decision-making is part of professional decision-making process. Keeping aside her performance, I have some fundamental issues with the contract. I, as a council member, has inherited this contract, and irrespective of for whom this contract is for, I would not have supported this contract at the outset, and as such, I cannot support the amendment of the contract. Why I cannot support the contract? Annual salary plus benefits of $767,000 is a lot of money. Basically, we are paying a monthly salary of almost equal to $64,000 monthly, every month. This includes salary plus the compensation, I would just want to point out. I do not think it's prudent to spend this type of money under this contract. I did some comparative study with the packages other city managers of Santa Clara County and Santa Clara cities which own or operate their own utilities. Our compensation package is way, way more than any city. As elected official, I want to make sure that every taxpayer dollar is paid after due diligence, and this amount does not pass my due diligence test. I spoke to several of the residents, and most were surprised to learn that the amount of money we are paying under this contract is very high. As elected official, we are responsible for making prudent financial decisions. I also want to point out, it is not only what we are paying today, but the city is also liable for the pension liability on this amount. Keeping these aspects in mind, I will not be supporting this amendment. And once again, I want to point out, my decision is not based on what Dinah has done, but as a fiscal policy matter only. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. I just, why I support the amendment to the employment agreement for the city manager. I mean, she has demonstrated in the short time that she's been here, she was hired in 2017. She has turned the city around. She actually did not take a raise last year, I believe, and so this is being backdated because it's taken so long to get to this point, because there's a lot, this decision to give her a raise was not just done without a lot of input and guidance and from our staff, from our HR department. I mean, it was done very methodically and with comparisons with other cities. But I think what it came down to, I mean, for me, is just the amount of time that our city manager puts into her job. I mean, it's not just a 9-to-5 job, it's literally a 24/7 job. And it's not just the fact that it's 24/7, she's also overseeing the Silicon Valley Power. She is dealing with stadium issues as the executive director of the Stadium Authority, and she also, of course, oversees the City of Santa Clara. And so she gives so much, and just anything that comes up, you know, out of the blue. She's very responsive. I have sent her emails at 11 o'clock at night, and I'll have a response at 6:30 in the morning. She's constantly doing her job, and I mean, when you think about the fact that she is overseeing basically three corporations at this salary, there's no there's no CEO out there that takes a salary for probably less than $500,000, and here she is overseeing three corporations. So as far as I can see, we are getting a good deal with all that she does and all that she has given to the city and helping turn it around in this short period of time that she has been hired as the city manager. So I'm very happy to make this motion and to support her, the amendment to her employment agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hardy.
Thank you. I too looked at the numbers, and when I realized that part of this compensation does come from the Stadium Authority, which she oversees, and when we asked, there was approximately 20% of her time is to do that. Also, Silicon Valley Power pays a portion of this compensation, and we are the only city in this area that has our own power, and we generate our own power as well as having our own company. And that's one of the reasons people want to live in Santa Clara and businesses want to be here. And then we have a convention center. So for a city our size, we have 3 extra headaches. And when you add that up, I do struggle with large amounts like that. I'm into numbers. But basically, we are taking some of the compensation that was for housing and moving it over. So it's not a direct raise in the same way that most people would think of it. And I want the public to be clear about that, and that we think they deserve the best, because we've seen good city managing, and we've seen other kinds, and I want to keep the best.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hardy. Is there any member of the public that would like to say anything? Please come forward. All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll be supporting the motion. This, as Vice Mayor Hardy said, this is a transfer from a housing allowance into a base salary, which will cost the city a little bit more. But I do agree, our city manager, in her first couple of weeks working here a couple of years ago, found a $3 million mistake that a previous city manager had made. That's just to one example of the many issues she found, and she has really taken the council's job of reforming Santa Clara very seriously, and has taken our city department by department and cleaned up the mess that we were in. And so I truly believe that we do deserve the best, and I do believe that we have the best city manager, and she's compensated. We have 3 giant businesses: the city, the billion-dollar utility, and the billion-dollar stadium, and she is in charge of all of them. Throw in a convention center that had to go through complete new management this year, and others. So I'm actually surprised, Councilmember Chahal, because all through the process you supported this until this very moment. So I believe that she deserves a council that supports her and her work for the city. And we couldn't have gone through the reforms that we went through without her professional leadership and guidance. So I will be supporting the motion, and we have a motion and a second. So, Councilmember Chahal, did you like to say something else?
I just want to point out, Mayor Gilmore, at no stage I'm discounting City Manager Deanna's work. My only concern is this contract is way out of the comparative studies with other cities. And I'm representing residents of Santa Clara, and I was walking within the Santa Clara for different items like Monroe, and I discussed this thing with several residents, and the input was same thing what I'm trying to do. So I am not discounting in any way what City Manager Deanna has done. My problem is the contract we signed at the outset, like, again, I want to point out, $767,000 a year comes out to be $64,000 a month. And that's my point. Like, I compared this data with the cities of Santa Clara. I compared this data with the cities which own utilities, like City of Palo Alto, cities of Pasadena, Sacramento has a utility, and Glendale has a utility. I compare those data, and I have those figures with me. When residents asked me how you are doing the comparison, so I did that comparison, Mayor Gilmore. So that's the reason, and to me, it looks like this amount plus the pension amount, which city is liable for that going down the lane, and I trying to be very prudent fiscally, and that's the reason I'm against the contract.
I understand that, and I appreciate that, but you did not bring any of this up as we were going through and negotiating this. But again, the negotiation and what's on the agenda tonight is to transfer the housing allowance to the allowance. But I don't know any cities that are in our area that have not only own their electric utility, but they own their own NFL stadium, and they also own their own convention center. So I don't know of any of the surrounding cities that have that you could compare to, but that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Please register your vote. And that passes 5-1. Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing, which is action on project approvals for the proposed 65 residential unit affordable housing project at 2330 Monroe Street. And this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and we'll start with our staff report. Good evening, Mr. Veach.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Jonathan Veach, Housing Manager, and tonight we're excited to present the 2330 Monroe Street DDA and entitlements for approval. I'll start off by providing a brief overview of the project and the process that got us here today, along with some of the details of the affordable housing transaction, followed by Director Crabtree's discussion covering the land use and entitlements. This is just a transition slide to the project overview, but I did want to take a moment to allow people to take a look at one of the project renderings showing the proposed 65-unit affordable housing projects that's 3 stories tall. This image is a site map showing the property at the intersection of Santa Tomas and Monroe, highlighted in red. The site at 2330 Monroe Street is roughly 2.5-acre city-owned site that's currently vacant. To the south of the site, you'll see the project adjoins the rear yards of 11 single-family homes. And across Santa Tomas on the opposite side is a new city park that was recently opened. So tonight's meeting is really the culmination of about 2.5 years worth of work at this site. In 2017, we initiated community engagement and community visioning for the project site. The RFP and community report were published in March 2018. And City Council approved Freebird Development Company as the developer in September 2018. About a year ago, in February 2019, Freebird filed its development applications, and we've been working through the entitlement process and negotiating the DDA since that date. Here are just a few photos from the community workshop we did back in 2017. Transparency has really been the cornerstone of this development project and process. Community engagement's important on every site that we develop, but we felt it was especially important at this site given the high degree of community interest at Santa Masa Monroe, and also considering prior attempts to develop this site. By the numbers, we sent out 650 paper notifications to owners, property owners within 1,000 feet of the subject property. Over 50 participants participated in our community engagement meeting, and we had over 250 survey respondents that were recorded in our community visioning report. The report was presented with all the survey data and basically every single piece of feedback that was recorded throughout the development process. Ultimately, all the data was made public and included in the RFP, and we challenged developers to put together thoughtful proposals that would consider all of the community feedback. This isn't all of the feedback, but I wanted to highlight some of the key questions that guided the RFP and also Freebird's development proposal. Related to affordability, there was a preference for a broad range of incomes that included from 30% AMI all the way up to moderate income and workforce housing. Related to density, there was a strong preference for the minimum density, which is 20 units per acre or 50 total units. And related to building height, there was a preference for 2 stories. So we used all of that and went through the community engagement process with the developer. And so here we are today. This is a conceptual site plan for the project. Freebird is proposing a 3-story, 65-unit affordable housing project with 98 parking spaces, approximately 32,000 square feet of central open space that also functions as a setback from the adjoining property line, in addition to trees and fencing to further mitigate any development impact to the neighbors. The original development plan called for 75 parking spaces. However, parking was one of the key and consistent issues through every community engagement meeting that we've had. And so parking has increased by 30% to 98 spaces. Actually, it's 94 spaces, and there's 3 EV charging stations and an accessible parking space for our set-aside units. And that gets us to about a 1.5 ratio of parking spaces to units. On-site amenities include a fitness center, a game room, a laundry room, and a community room located on the ground floor that opens up to the community area, the outdoor community area. The existing sidewalk along Monroe Street will be replaced with a 10-foot wide sidewalk, including a 4-foot landscaping strip to enhance pedestrian access and connectivity to the neighborhood. And along San Tomas Expressway, there'll be a 6-foot high precast sound wall to help protect against sound and pollution, while access to the site will come off of Monroe Street, where a 26-foot wide driveway would lead to the surface parking lot. Now I'll provide a brief overview of the DDA transaction. Related to the financing, I wanted to highlight a couple points that are compelling from the city's perspective. The proposal supports a broad range of income, all the way from 30% AMI, which is the lowest end of the affordability spectrum, up to moderate income or workforce housing. 25% of the units, or 16 units in total, would be set aside for Santa Clara's growing population of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The city would retain long-term ownership of the site through a ground lease. We'll limit the city's capital contribution to $77,000 per unit. The proposal also leverages other public subsidies, including $13 million of tax credit equity and a $3.2 million contribution from the county. As you can see from the tables here, the proposed unit mix is about as balanced as it can be for this type of project. There's close to 10 units at every single AMI band, from 30% to 100. In total, we're anticipating 7 studios, 23 one-bedrooms, 29 two-bedrooms, and 6 three-bedrooms, so predominantly 1s and 2s. As an example, I posted the anticipated rents for a one-bedroom apartment at the project at each of the AMI levels. And so on the low end, rents would be as low as $878, up to about $2,600 for our 100% AMI units. As mentioned earlier, the anticipated financing sources include a $5 million city loan, $13 million in tax credit equity, a $5.5 million loan from the state funding program, and a $3.2 million loan from the county. And the county contribution was very important on this project because typically the county uses Measure A to fund projects that are targeted for chronically homeless populations. And so in March 2019, the County Board of Supervisors approved an appropriation of the county's boomerang funds. It was about $9 million. And so the county put out a NOFA in 2019 targeted at housing for very low-income people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so this project was able to secure about a third of that NOFA, $3 million of the $9 million total. Ultimately, the DDA provides the required terms and conditions for the conveyance and development of the property. At closing, the city will convey a ground lease to the developer for the affordable housing project and will provide a supplemental capital loan of $5 million through a loan agreement. The principal under the loan will bear interest of 2 to 3%. That's based on underwriting and ultimately the feasibility of what the project can afford, and will receive annual payments based on the availability of residual receipts. So when the principal and the loan is fully paid, we'll continue to receive 50% of the residual receipt payments until the end of the ground lease term, which is 55, at a minimum of 55 years. The regulatory agreement will also run 55 years coterminous with the ground lease. Services for the IDD units would be provided by Housing Choices Coalition, and funding for those services will be provided by the San Andreas Regional Center. In terms of next steps, we'll continue working and negotiating the financing of the project with Freebird and are hopeful that the project can start construction, best case scenario, by the end of this calendar year. Director Crabtree will walk through the entitlements.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I am Andrew Crabtree. And one of the things I really appreciate about Santa Clara is that the housing program and the planning, land use regulatory programs are integrated into the same department, and we're able to work closely together through a process like this one to develop a really good project to bring to the council. So as noted, the site is located at the southeast corner of Santa Tomas and Monroe Street. It's currently vacant, and it abuts 11 single-family homes along the property line. So we did look closely at that interface. There are measures incorporated into the project design to like sound wall, for visual screening, the design of the building itself with balcony placement and so forth, to really be sensitive to that interface and address any concerns there as well. I'd also mention that the project includes improvements for the pedestrian crossing across San Tomas Expressway, recognizing that there's a park there and it'll bring benefit to the site as well as the community through those improvements. This is the example of the elevations of the project. It's referred to as sort of a modern farm-style architecture. And there were a number of community meetings at which different architectural treatments and color schemes were presented to the community. This was a clear community preference in terms of the color scheme. And so they were able to be very closely integrated into the project design. The building is, as mentioned, 3 stories overall, but it lowers to 2 stories sort of on the edges as transition, also recognizing the context and sort of breaking up the mass of the building with different roof heights and forms, as you can see in these illustrations. So the land use actions in front of you are adoption of environmental clearance for the project through a mitigated negative declaration, mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and then also general plan amendments and rezoning that collectively would allow the development of the project. The site currently is designated, I would mention, as right-of-way in the city's general plan, really a holdover from when the land was acquired as part of a San Tomas Expressway widening project. There is, I would note, also architectural review hearing scheduled for this project on February 5th. So they're moving forward quickly if council gives these approvals tonight so they can move quickly through the process. So the Planning Commission hearing took place on November 13th. There were 3 members of the public that spoke, 2 in support of the project, 1 expressing concern over parking. And as Jonathan mentioned earlier, the project has a significant amount of parking for the size of it, particularly if you take into consideration that some of the units are reserved for people who won't be driving, and you look at it in that regard, it actually has a higher parking ratio than most of the multifamily projects that you would see in recent years. So really, from a staff analyst standpoint, there's really no reason to be concerned about the amount of parking. It's well provided on the site. I also mentioned that at the Planning Commission hearing, there was a discussion about the appropriate density for the site, with some people asking if it shouldn't be a higher density. Wouldn't it be better to achieve more units on the site? In addition to the close partnership with the community to bring forward a project that the community really supports and is appropriate density, from a land use standpoint as well, I mean, our in our planning judgment, this is the right type of project for this. It's not a site with close access to commercial services, for example, where you'd have lots of people walking from this building to types of services. So it's not that type of environment, and for that reason, as well as the community interface issues and the support of the community, we think this is appropriate density. The Planning Commission, in their recommendation, included 7 additional conditions that they recommended. And first off, I would note that there's really just one here on this list, number 4, which the applicant has indicated that they could not implement in the project, and that's a conversion from natural gas to a heat pump for water heating in the building. There's some construction cost issues related to that that would really make it problematic. And I would just note that this is perhaps points to a bigger policy question that really should be taken up outside the context of a single project if the city wants to move towards not allowing natural gas in new development. The other conditions, numbers 2 and 7, sort of are further point towards further exploration of project. That has been done. Staff has looked at both issues raised there. Is not recommending any change to the project design. Can go into that more if there's questions about those. And then the other measures listed here have all been incorporated into the project, and specifically number 5, the request that the community room that's part of the design would be made available to other Santa Clara residents for up to 20 events per year. A condition has been added to the conditions of approval that would require that of the property ownership going forward. I would also mention that since the projects come forward, you've received some communication, one about the parking issue. We also received a concern from a community member about noise during construction. The project has a full environmental analysis that concluded there would be no impacts from noise caused by the project, including during construction, but the applicant has agreed that they would have a person available to, as a contact to the community should there be concerns about noise. As with all projects, we analyze it for consistency with the city's general plan. There's a number of goals and policies that this project would implement that are discussed in the reports that were attached in the packet. We mentioned that there's been a significant amount of community engagement that helps us to bring forward such a good project, and that it really overall aligns with our goals for bringing forward a project that helps meet the needs of the community. And it also, as discussed by Jonathan, would perform well in terms of financial performance. So with that, staff is recommending tonight that the City Council adopt a resolution for the environmental clearance, approving the mitigated negative declaration, mitigation monitoring and reporting program, that you adopt a resolution to approve the requested general plan amendment, and as well as a resolution for the requested rezoning for the 65 rental affordable residential unit project, and also to adopt a resolution approving, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute a disposition and development agreement for the project. So with that, staff is available for any questions.
Okay, we'll start with questions from the council. Vice Mayor Hardy.
Thank you. You've answered a little bit of the notes I made. The wall along the back that fronts to the existing neighborhood, is that, I didn't hear a height on it, is that a wood fence? My concern is I didn't see a lot of buffer, and when you have cars parking right up against a fence, often you have people slamming into the fence.
Right.
Does that sound like the voice of experience from somebody who has a fence right behind their house and a parking lot?
Right.
So I was concerned about that. I like that you addressed the noise reduction from San Tomas to a certain extent. How high, was it 6 feet you were saying for the sound wall?
Okay, so should I kind of walk through
go
those
ahead,
issues?
I've just got 4, and some of them
All
are
right.
easy.
Yeah, so there is a 6-foot-high precast concrete sound wall along San Tomas Expressway, because there's a potential noise impact from the expressway to the project. There's an 8-foot-high wooden privacy fence along the southern boundary of the site, and then that transitions to concrete near the entryway into the site where there would be the most potential exposure to noise from vehicles entering and exiting the site. This,
And the trees on that side, I'm
there are,
seeing the tree.
yeah, there's a line of landscaping on the project side of that fence as well. The parking is really oriented more towards the building and circulation in the way, but there is parking along there. And as we go through the community process, you sort of balancing different issues. One is, the placement of the building further away from the community was generally a desired outcome here. There is, open space as well. You see in the center of the site. Again, that can cause noise more so than parked cars typically. So moving that away and really having the parking closest to the interface with the neighborhood is probably the best design solution for minimizing potential impacts to those residents. And this is something that's been they're well aware of through this project process.
Mostly I was concerned that it is an 8-foot fence for the existing neighborhood. And the better windows for, especially on the side that fronts San Tomas, because you're up above. 6 feet helps with some of the noise, but once you get above that, the noise from the traffic on Monroe, because we have pushed it closer to Monroe, I was concerned about that would be double paned windows with the noise reduction situation. The height of the buildings, I made a note that I remember seeing it, and I can't remember, I think it was 35 feet, was that correct?
Right.
When I went back to look, I couldn't find it, and I know I saw it in my reading.
Yeah, do you have additional questions? I'll pull up the number here.
Isn't our code double pane windows?
Okay, on the window issue,
yeah,
it was studied in the environmental analysis, and it is
Okay.
included as a measure to mitigate noise.
Good.
And to the point, the building code generally does require it as well for insulation purposes.
And the city owns the land. We're leveraging public funds to build this. Are we going to be the landlord? Are we going to hire a company to do that?
So typically, the developer will contract and hire the property manager. I think in this case, it's contemplated that it would be John Stewart Company, but that's still subject to change. But what we do is, as part of the kind of closing of the financing and lease up, we review the property management plan, and we have a set of criteria where we require certain standards and how the project's managed. So it's up to the private owner, but we, will oversee kind of the management and process to our standards. Yeah.
Okay.
And on the building height, the maximum height is 43 feet, 4 inches. So it's a 3-story building, but that relates to the roof form that you saw in the elevation. So it's
Vice
a
Mayor,
sort
is
of
that
pitched
it
roof.
with your questions? Okay. Councilmember Chahal?
Thank you, Mayor. Question regarding the fence. So you mentioned 6 feet right next to the single-family homes, right? Excepting on the corners, you have 8 feet.
8 feet along that interface. The 6-foot fence is on the San Tomas side.
Right. And so what's the setback from the single-family residence's boundary line, like property line of this fence would be, like, or is it they share this fence?
Yeah, the fence is a shared fence along the property line. And then as you move into the project, there is a small residential landscape strip, and then the parking before that are also, separating the building and the active uses from the neighbors.
Okay. And one of the requests from residents was, can we have this fence also as a concrete fence? One between the single-family residence and the property.
Yeah. Well, we have a number of people from the neighborhood here who could maybe speak to that additionally, but my understanding is that a portion of it would be concrete, but generally...
On the corners only. I
Right.
saw that 8,
Yeah.
I don't know what is the exactly length, but on the right-hand side and left-hand
Yeah.
side.
In some cases, people may not prefer a concrete fence as they're sharing it with their backyard
Okay, so that was the feedback, like if developer can work with them down the line, if they're open to that, and work with the residents once again, because there are only few houses over there, 10, 15 houses. If he's open to that suggestion, I would suggest that let's look at that option, if we can change that wood fence to concrete fence on that. Depends upon the maximum, what are the majority of the residents want on that.
Okay, well, it's something that we could potentially make as an option available to them, but I think it has been discussed through the number of the community meetings.
Okay. And location of the garbage, that was another thing which came up to for the residents.
Right. So here on the plan, let's see if I have a pointer here. No, I don't think so. The garbage enclosure is located on the left-hand side about midway up in the parking lot area. Obviously, you have to have a location where it's accessible to garbage trucks to access it. And it's sort of pulled away from the neighborhood, is the residential interface as much as feasible, but still be part of the circulation plan and fitting everything on the site in an efficient way.
So if I look at that side, like on the Andrew, on that side, is it on the right bottom corner?
I think it's not. No, my understanding is that it's sort of, it's hard to point without a pointer, but it's a gray box sort of as you move up the, you see that gray reinforced
okay.
pad?
That gray box
Yeah, and then
along
there's
the
an
property
enclosure
line.
there,
That
right.
gray box, okay, okay. The only concern was the residents were concerned about the garbage being close to them. If we can move it a little bit further back, that would be great.
Well, we can look at that in the architectural review process.
Okay. And the parking calculation, like, there is a lot of overflow of parking on that area. Like, there's a reason Sherman Drive and El Capitan Drive, they have a 1 hour, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 1 hour parking restriction, and residents have a parking permits over there. So the one we calculated, I think 94 parking spots.
So the project overall has 98 parking
98.
spaces. Some of those are being designated for electrical vehicles per the process, right?
So they're fairly good as per the calculation we do, or like they're not deficient according to our calculations for this 65 units.
This exceeds our city requirements for the types, based on the types of units. There's more than enough parking.
More than enough, okay. And parking on Monroe, like I read no parking or there may be parking. There was some conflicting depending upon how we make a left turn or right turn. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure. So there was a discussion at the Planning Commission about the safety exiting the site onto Monroe Street, and that if that could be enhanced by having a right turn only, and there is a proposal to restrict the parking along Monroe Street, and the question was if they limited it to right turn egress only, could you then return the parking? In discussion with the city's traffic engineering department, because there is a center turn lane on Monroe Street, the thought is that even if there was a sign that said right turn only, people would still take advantage of that center turn lane to exit the site. And it would actually not address the safety concern that's prompting the red curb in that area. So from a traffic engineer standpoint, it's necessary to maintain that red curb and not...
no parking on the Monroe next to that.
Right,
okay.
as proposed.
Okay, thank you. My other question is regarding the community room. Like, it's open to the residents, right? And that's open to other residents other than this complex itself. How many? It's 20 days, if I'm not
20 events per year. So that was a condition that was proposed by the Plan Commission and the applicant agreed to at the hearing, which was that the community room that was being included in the project for use by the residents could be made available to other community members 20 times per year for events.
And that would be free? First come, first serve, free?
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
But the applicant could speak to that more if you like.
Okay. And I would request if we can increase that to more than 20. If it's not booked, somebody not booked within the community, then we should not cap it by 20. Like if you take, we have 52 weekends, so if we can increase that to, or not put a cap on that.
Yeah, it's certainly within the purview of the council to modify the conditions of approval, but I would encourage you to speak to the applicant who would be operating the site about how that might affect their operations.
Okay. Locations back. Okay, and I do have another question about the lease. Like this is for 55 years, right? And there's a provision to extend it to 65 years. So what happens after, let's say after 55 or 65, what happens? The property?
It reverts to the city. Simple as right.
Right, so we'll determine the lease term before the closing. One of the issues is when we're executing the DDA, we don't have all the financing partners on board yet, so it's hard to fully negotiate the terms of the ground lease. And so some of the funding providers, the state being one, may require a longer lease term because they'll do what's called a residual analysis. And sometimes you need a longer term to make sure that all of the loan and the debt can be paid off. So we're anticipating it will probably be at least a 65-year term, but that will be negotiated before the closing. And then at 65 years, yes, the land reverts back to the city. Typically, you renegotiate and extend the affordability to keep the affordable housing going as long as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, so thank you. So Councilmember Shahal touched on some of my questions, but there was a little bit of confusion on the left-hand turn. I mean, that whole situation with the egress out into the red spot. So are we, because there is like a two-way turn lane in the middle of Monroe, I think at that spot, or there's an extra safe lane or whatever. So are we saying that we are going to, at this point, allow left turns out of the parking
Right.
lot?
So as you see in the language here, I perhaps should have gone into it more initially, but it says explore the feasibility of restricting egress. So that was the way that the commission gave direction to the applicant and staff. So we followed up by discussing the question with our city's traffic engineer. And they said based on the presence of that middle turn lane, refuge lane, in their experience, even if there was sort of a right turn only sign posted, people would still take advantage of that turn lane. People would still feel comfortable that it's a safe movement to make. And so in their judgment, it would not improve the situation to have that restriction in place. So the recommendations brought forward tonight by staff is, as originally proposed, not to include that restriction, but there is some proposed red curb to facilitate visibility in front of the site. As discussed, there's really a significant amount of parking on this project site, and it's somewhat removed from the community that it backs up to, but somewhat separated by just the configuration of the land uses there. So, our recommendation is that we move forward as proposed with that red curb and not pursue the right turn only restriction.
Okay, great. So I just, also I had, it seemed to me the project seems very well planned, very thoughtfully planned for the people who will be calling this development their home, and also for those who already have their homes surrounding it. I think there's been a lot of accommodations. So I just wanted to make clear. So this is, while it's a project that it's receiving some public monies and things like this, I mean, this is not really a public housing project. So just to clarify on some of the points that were being made, the community room that's there, I mean, that's primarily intended for the needs of the people who are the residents, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
And so, I mean, in a way, it is an accommodation to allow members of the, because most of our other projects are, privately developed projects, we wouldn't be asking that for their community facilities. And like, I think once again, very thoughtfully planned recreation areas for the different ages of the residents, and the fitness trail, those are not really considered open to the public, right? They're going to be mostly maintained for the use of the residents.
That's
Because there
correct.
is a park right across the street, a very nice, beautiful park.
Correct, yes.
So the facilities here are primarily for the,
Right. Yeah, absolutely, that's the intent, is that to provide on-site amenities designed for that population that would be in, as Aaron mentioned, there's some people with different abilities and so forth. So the intent is really to meet the needs of that population for on-site recreational use. And then, there is, as you mentioned, a park in the very close by, and this project, as I mentioned, also would help with some of the pedestrian access to that and provide benefit to the community in that way.
because the sidewalks are improved, and I like the way the fitness path was laid out, and it seemed like from some of the examples, some very thoughtfully picked out pieces of play equipment for all ages to enjoy. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Oh, thank you. Andrew, so I guess my big question is, can you make these maps a little bit bigger, because my eyes are getting really bad? So you have this 8-foot concrete wall on Monroe. Is there trees around that? I couldn't figure that out.
Right.
So did you have trees next to that to buffer?
Let's see if this one might be a little bit
Okay, so
easier
I
to
see
see,
the wall,
actually,
but-
without the color, but.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so along Monroe frontage, most of the Monroe Street frontage, there's not a sound wall, but there are street trees being implemented. If you go out there today, there's just a sidewalk at the back of curb. So this actually brings the frontage up to our city standards, where there's a park strip with street trees planted along the project frontage, and then a detached sidewalk. And then the sound walls are really along San Tomas Expressway, and there's landscaping on both. The wall is at the property edge, but there is then additional landscaping that's part of the San Tomas Expressway. So there would be landscaping on both sides of that sound wall that's along San Tomas Expressway. What you see here on the top of this drawing is on the development side of the wall, and then there would be landscaping on the Express County side of the wall, because they have landscape area. And then along the bottom of this drawing is the 8-foot tall privacy wall that abuts the residential neighborhood, and there's a series of trees that would be planted along that in a landscape strip along that edge as well.
Okay, because the thing is that when they did the walls going down San Tomas Expressway with the homes and they kind of took a little bit of their backyards, and there doesn't seem to be any landscaping or trees to absorb some of the sound, aside from the fact that just the air quality itself of the cars going by, the trees will absorb a lot of that.
Right.
So I was wondering if there was some way that it would really take down the noise, the air quality, the whatever, because that's a very heavy intersection usage. Okay, so then going to the park across the street.
Can I
Go ahead.
just speak to that a little bit? I think you can see here, the red is highlighted is the project site. So in this particular, I understand the condition that you're describing very well, which you
Yes.
see on other parts of San Tomas Expressway. In this particular site, it's not that condition, because there is some, you see the landscape here on the aerial photo that's not colored red. So there is a separation that would exist between the building, the wall, and then the expressway.
Okay, it's just my concern, because the people that live there, it's a heavy trafficked. And my other concern was for the people to get across the street to our beautiful new park, and the timing of that, and that, I've seen people try to actually walk across San Tomas. They run, because they are so scared of being run over. So have we come up with anything to help them get across the street? Because I don't know who's going to be living in these places. And if it's someone, I already know some of our elderly people have a hard time just getting across El Camino. So I'm really concerned about them having that park area to use, and then the fear of not being able to get there. So those are just my comments on that one. And then the parking. I'm sorry, no matter how much parking you put in there, it's going to go into the neighborhood. And I know there is restrictions on parking on Monroe. There is no place to park on Santa Tomas, thank God. But what happens when that overflow starts to, do we have some kind of thing with the property manager that if it starts to get into the neighborhood, that they are going to address that issue?
That's certainly something we could bring up if we receive complaints that people are parking from this project into the neighborhood. We can work with the, that's one of the benefits of this type of development is that there is on-site management that's very active and responsive if there's concerns like that.
Okay, and then the other thing you put in one of the planning commission about VTA and a stop. Where are we on that one?
Right. So so the other referral item was to the to staff to reach out to the VTA and discuss moving the bus stop. Let's see where that is here. That's
Number
7 on this list. So again, the current bus stop is located about 3, 4, or 5 minutes away by walk, just a little bit down Santa Tomas. And so in looking at the benefit that would be received by moving it over, it was, again, working with the engineers, it was determined that there really wasn't sufficient benefit to justify the cost of moving the bus stop. So that was not explored further.
Okay, so we're not adding that to the planning commission action then?
Right. So
Okay.
the planning commission action was to explore it. We've done some of that exploration and conclude that there's not, it doesn't really meet the criteria cost benefit criteria for justifying moving it.
Okay, and then also they brought up the fact that they wanted the Uber people to have a drop off and pick up. How would they were going to incorporate that into driving into this area and coming back? I mean, was that explored also?
So the recommendation, which the applicant has agreed that they could implement, would be to designate one of the 98 parking spaces as a sort of a short-term drop-off pickup parking space. And so that's currently part of the project now.
Okay, but one space? I mean, there's a lot of people in there. I mean, that to me is kind of like, when they color in and say 10 minutes only, people abuse that. I mean, they don't pay attention, but.
Yeah, so the question is to weigh the potential loss of, once those spaces are designated in that way, they're not available for people to use for, longer term visits or residents. It could be possible, but you sort of have to weigh it like, what will the demand be? How long will the Uber or the food delivery person or someone be parking there, a UPS truck or whatever it might be. But, I think through the process, the recommendation was for one space.
Okay. Thank you for your answers.
Councilmember Watanabe, you have questions?
Just a few. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Andrew. Just tagging on about the VTA stop, the bus stop. Where is it now? Did you say it is on Monroe? It's on Monroe. Okay.
It's on Monroe, and it's, let's see if this other aerial is a little bit bigger. Yeah. So you can see it's on it's really by Los Padres, just a little bit further. There's a little blue bus icon.
Okay.
Oh, there is thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay. So they're looking. So they can't. There isn't the ability to move the bus stop closer to the project. Is that it?
It's possible, but it's already within about, it's about the length of 6 or 7 houses away.
Oh,
so to move it, there's a considerable cost, and not much benefit, really, in terms of it's already quite proximate to the site.
Okay. And then regarding crossing San Tomas, is there a pedestrian operated crossing there at the moment, or will it be installed? Do we know?
It's existing.
It is there now. Great. And so, but it can be extended. I mean, depending on how long it is right now, because I believe there may.
Yeah. So And that's a county facility. So they're the ones that control the operations of the signal. It's something we could reach out to them.
Okay.
Add on that.
I will add just that it is a county facility. Now, if there's a change in use and you have different circumstances, then they will look at the signal timing changes. There's minimum requirements they have to meet for the crossing, but they can add additional time depending on what the adjacent uses are. So it's something that we could check into as staff, let them know what the project that's coming to see if they would consider making modifications and what the process would be.
Thank you, yes, because I know that we were able to do that up on Agnew by John Burns, the retirement center. But you know, just out of concern, because I believe some of the residences are going to be held back for special needs, and just taking into consideration their ability to be able to cross. And then just one more question. Because some of the apartments are being utilized for or being held back for special needs, I would imagine they would probably take ground floor apartments, but just out of, you know, a possibility of needing to go to the third floor, for instance, is an elevator part of the project?
I think I deferred to the applicant to really
Okay,
speak a little bit more about
great.
the operations.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing else.
Thank you. No more questions. I'm going to call the applicant up for their presentation. I think they have 10 minutes, Nora. 10. Oh, I only see 5. There you go.
So I only have
We're going to
5?
double that.
Okay.
We'll
that's
double
what I
that
thought.
for you, okay?
Well, I'm recovering from
Thank you.
bronchitis, and Jonathan and Andrew did a tremendous job providing an overview. So we're going to actually
You
try
heard
to
all
keep
the
it-
questions and a lot
We're
of
going to try to
answers.
keep it pretty
so
short.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, thank you for having us here. We appreciate your time tonight. This is just a clicker that I just go like that. Is that how it works?
Yeah. There you
All
go.
right, real quickly, we're going to do a brief intro of our development team, provide an overview of the development program, describe the pre-development timeline, describe our community engagement process. The architect's going to talk a little bit about design, and then we're going to provide a look ahead and moving towards construction. My name is Robin Zimbler. I'm the founder of Freebird Development. I started Freebird about a year and a half ago after working for over 10 years for large affordable housing developers. Right before Freebird, I worked for Related California for 4 years, overseeing the Bay Area affordable housing arm. So haven't been participating in the related project that's here in Santa Clara, since it's a market rate job, but I oversaw their affordable housing arm in the Bay Area. Other members of the development team who are here tonight are Jan Stokely, who is the Executive Director of Housing Choices Coalition, and Paul from HKIT Architects, and they'll both be speaking here tonight as well. We took to heart the community visioning report when we came up with our development program for the site, and our development program has stayed pretty consistent from our original RFP response to today. So big picture is that we wanted to create an inclusive mixed income project, and what we mean by that is we are providing a range of affordabilities, as Jonathan already described, a range of family sizes from studios to 3 bedrooms, and a range of abilities with a 25% set aside for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That is a perfect segue to Jan, who is going to talk about her organization and that set aside.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jan Stokely with Housing Choices. Our organization is focused on supporting residents with developmental disabilities, including the many here in the city of Santa Clara, to live in inclusive community housing and live as independently as possible. The city was one of the first cities in the county to make a commitment to this population. We have 4 properties here now, Estancia, Rivertown, and 2 single-family homes. Since you got involved in addressing this housing need more than 20 years ago, the population of adults living with developmental disabilities here in the city and across the county has grown dramatically. So we have an active caseload at this moment of 168 City of Santa Clara residents with developmental disabilities who are applying for affordable housing and are on wait lists for housing across the county. And that number is going to continue to grow. So this housing project will address an important need for existing residents and one that's going to continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
So real quickly, the pre-development timeline, what's highlighted on this slide and the next slide is that we've already actually been here at City Council 4 times. This is our 5th time before City Council. Over the last year since we signed our ENA, we've also hosted 4 community meetings, which I'll speak about in a second. We went back to the project clearance committee 3 times. So it's been a very iterative process, both with the community and city staff. City staff has been excellent to work with. We also, as you know, were at the Planning Commission in November. What this pre-development timeline does not include is that during this time I also had twins about 4 months ago.
Minor detail, okay. Are there photos here? Okay.
Tons.
Okay.
With respect to community engagement, Jonathan kind of walked through the city-led community engagement process that happened before the RFP was ever issued. But once we were designated as the developer, we hosted 4 community meetings ourselves between October 2018 and July of 2019. Each community meeting was attended by approximately 25 to 30 people. Overall, 75 people came to at least one of those 4 meetings. Some people attended all 4, but over 75 people attended at least one of those meetings. We advertised pretty widely for all of those meetings. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to talk about the design.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, members of the commission. Some of this is repetitive, but I think you've gotten an orientation to the site. And just to reiterate, as Robin pointed out, we've had 4 meetings with the community, and we didn't develop this design in a vacuum. We really had a lot of really excellent feedback from neighbors. We came to meeting number 1 with some ideas and really asked for feedback. We showed pictures of lots of different types of architectural styles. We presented many different designs for fences and for landscaping, and we got some really excellent feedback. So what we're seeing here is really the result of a community process. As mentioned before, the site plan is informed by the need to create a buffer, create protected open space that's facing south, gets good sun and protection from the noise. We have a really robust outdoor space with the track, community gardening facilities, and a number of recreational amenities as well. We did mention that during the design process we increased parking and also worked with the neighbors to really get the sound wall designed in a way that everyone was happy with. And a number of street improvements being made to Monroe to improve the pedestrian experience and really create a more up-to-date and complete street. Renderings, as mentioned earlier, it's a fairly eclectic style. Again, we approached the neighbors with lots of different images of different architectural styles, and this is really a fusion of the feedback that we got. We presented many different combinations of colors and styles, and this was really what the community gravitated towards. We're taking into consideration the orientation of the building to provide shading on the south-facing windows and living rooms to improve the comfort and the energy performance of the building as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to me. Okay, quick look ahead. We're obviously here tonight. We're scheduled for the Architectural Review Committee February 5th. We're also hoping to sign the DDA in February. And then, as Jonathan mentioned, best case scenario would be looking at a construction start at the end of this year. More realistically, probably beginning of next year. I'm going to use my remaining 2 minutes and 49 seconds to address some of the questions that came up, if that's okay. So one of the questions was the privacy fence between the site and the neighbors. So that is an 8-foot tall fence. It is wood because at our community engagement meetings, I think we had 3 of the 11 property owners, adjacent property owners, show up at any given time. And they actually had a preference for wood, not for concrete. They wanted it was originally supposed to be 6 foot. They wanted it 8 feet. We agreed to do 8 feet. That's no problem. The only one who requested that it be concrete is Mr. Saeed, who's supportive of the project. He couldn't be here tonight. He lives on the corner, right where the driveway will be. And so as a part of our plans, we have it being concrete throughout the length of his property, in part because that's where the most sound will be because it's where the driveway is. So it's concrete for that lot, and then it goes to wood after that, and that was consistent with what we heard people wanted. With respect to the trees, there are tree buffers all around the site. We're removing 4 trees, and we're replacing those 4 trees with over 120 trees. So we've been very deliberate in our landscaping plans and making sure that we have adequate tree buffers. And then with respect to the community room, so the same rules that apply to the residents will apply to the public. So it will be free of cost, but there will be a deposit that's required. I can't tell you right now how much the deposit is, but we haven't figured that part out yet, but it's usually a couple $100 deposit, and then after the event, they get the deposit back. In terms of the number of events, 20 is really the maximum that we're comfortable with, based on the fact that it does require staff time to prepare the room, to clean the room, et cetera, and that it is a room that is supposed to be primarily for the benefit of the residents. I had originally, wanted to do 1 a month. I agreed to do 20. Having it uncapped would be difficult, I believe. I think those were the 3 questions that came up that were left for me to answer, but I'm happy to answer more.
All right, thank you for that presentation. It was very complete. Any member of the council have questions so far that have not been answered? Councilmember Chahal.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding that concrete versus wood, because I spoke to, I don't know out of how many, but a couple of them mentioned concrete, just in case, because there are only 11 properties over there. It's very easy to find. If we reopen that thing with the residents, are you open to making all of that concrete, or we are?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with doing whatever whatever the majority of the residents want.
Perfect.
I do have some cost concerns. I mean, a 8-foot tall concrete fence requires a different foundation system than it's not as simple as a wood fence. So there are cost implications involved. So I just want to put that out there. But if there's budget for it and that's what the majority of the residents want, I'm open to that. I will say, we advertised for these meetings, 4 meetings, a lot. And all those property owners were contacted, and 3 showed up. So I kind of feel like we should be going with the people who were actively engaged and showed up for the community meetings.
No, I appreciate, and there was a good community outreach for this, and there is history behind that. But I appreciate that there was a good outreach from the community, and almost everybody was supportive of, is supportive of this project as such, with some minor tweaks and other stuff. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe, questions that haven't been asked yet?
Yes, I had asked the question about the elevator.
Yeah, Jonathan just reminded me of that. Yes, there is an elevator, and I just wanted to point out that and Jan can speak to this better than I can, but people with intellectual and developmental disabilities don't necessarily have physical disabilities, so they're not all, I would say the majority of them will not be in wheelchairs or needing accessible features. And just for fair housing reasons, those units will be interspersed throughout the building on all floors, not just on the first floor.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions, but I have a fair amount of the public that would like to speak, so maybe you'll have an opportunity to come back after to maybe answer any questions the public may have as well and give us some closing comments. So first I have Huskar Castro, followed by Gabrielle Cabanilla. If you're still here, you can queue up Gabrielle, and then Alex Shore after that. You can just come right up. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Wesker Castro, Policy Associate with Silicon Valley at Home. And on behalf of members, excuse me, and on behalf of our membership, SV at Home is enthusiastically endorsing Freebird Development's proposed 65-unit mixed income, mixed ability development at 2330 Monroe Street. We're excited this proposal truly encapsulates the idea of housing for all, as it includes a wide range of affordability levels, providing housing opportunities for people to make 25% area median income and up to 100% AMI. We especially want to highlight that it includes 16 homes for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, a vulnerable community in dire need of meaningful housing solutions. This development responds to the diverse housing needs of people of all incomes and abilities who live and work in Santa Clara. We're pleased that Freebird has engaged Housing Choices in the San Andreas Regional Center, two experienced, knowledgeable nonprofits as partners on the IDD aspect of the development. Their knowledge, combined with Freebird's development expertise, will provide the residents with IDD excellent homes and services. This is a fantastic opportunity of really providing a really inclusive housing type for residents of multiple income levels and multiple abilities as well. We'd like to thank Freebird, Housing Choices, everyone involved, as well as staff for all the work in making this happen, and we really want to see this go through. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Gabrielle Cabanilla, and then Alex Shore after that. Good evening.
I would like to skip my line because Darcy would like to talk first. She needs to go home soon.
Okay, Darcy McCann, please come forward. Move the microphone, please, somebody. We can hear her. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to let people know that I support this project. I am lucky that I live in another project in Santa Clara. I live at Archstone, and it has given me tremendous independence in our community, and I really believe that other people with disabilities can do the same thing with the right supports. And so I want to thank the city as well as Housing Choices, because I think it's so important to be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Thank you so much for your testimony and coming this evening. We appreciate it. Okay, Gabrielle, you're next.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Cabanilla, and I have been an early childhood educator for 42 years. I have a son that is in the spectrum and lives on SSI, and SSI is not enough for him to be getting his own housing. I am going to be 60 this year. I hope by the time 30 more years go on that my son will be in some kind of housing. He has been with the Housing Coalition, has not been able to get anything because he's on SSI. And also, we have been in Santa Clara for 19 years, and my son has been living, I have two sons, a 22 and the 22-year-old I'm talking about. He doesn't drive, so he relies on you know, the area in Santa Clara, and we really don't want to move out of Santa Clara at all. We even, as an early child educator, teaching preschoolers, we don't make not enough money even. If I have to talk about, for me even, you know, we with that too, but it's more important that we have inclusive for everyone that can be able to live on their own and be independent as we have taught our son to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Alex Shore, and then Neeraj Madarata after that. Good
evening, Council and Mayor. Alex Shore, Executive Director of Catalyze SV. For those who don't know, Catalyze SV does community engagement and project advocacy work, including projects here in Santa Clara. Although we didn't have a chance to review this project, our members, we did want to provide a few comments generally about community engagement and projects. First of all, I want to thank Jonathan and Andrew for highlighting community engagement and the city's efforts. It's always such an important component of development. And we also want to thank the applicants for talking about it as well. That was great to put some real quantity and quantification of the engagement. It's a really great practice that we highly recommend. We need many, many more projects like this, especially those that provide as many crucial homes for vulnerable populations. And we especially want more projects like this with more homes like this when it's on public land that you, the city, control. I did want to offer a comment about a parking experience I had recently. I toured an affordable housing project called Donner Lofts that's run by Mid-Penn Housing, and they explained, and I saw how many of the parking spaces in this affordable housing building, after it had been fully leased up, weren't even being fully used. So I'd invite the council to ask city staff what might happen to these parking spaces in this development if they are ending up empty overall. Community engagement is such a tricky thing. Part of the reason Catalyze SV exists is because decades of community opposition has been one of the main factors, unfortunately, causing our region's housing crisis. So just like you added a community room that's open to Santa Clarans, we always recommend framing your conversations when you talk to the community about development around what can a development site do for you and the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. Neeraj, and then Julie and Devin after that, and then Michael Ojeda after that. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
And pull it down.
My name is Luisa Carrillo, and I'm a resident coordinator for Housing Choices, and I am here to support Neeraj.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Neeraj Medirata, and I live in Santa Clara, and I support the thing Santa Clara, Monroe, for the affordable accommodation for the people with a disability. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out and testifying. We appreciate it. Thank you, Neeraj. All right, Julie and Devin, and then Michael Ojeda. Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Julian David Devon. About all of our, I think I'd say, group home house, it's just great living here. Although, I think I'd say that it's been kind of strange of any of our stuff that is, well, maybe I think I'd say our light switch. I've never seen it turn it on itself before, although I can really try to hold it to make it not turn on by itself. That is why we have a household resident who can really help us. Every time we have like problem issues in our group home, our household residents are the only ones who can really help us our best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. Thank you for coming. Michael, please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Michael Ojeda. I am a current resident at the Briarwood Co-op, which is run by Housing Choices Coalition, and I've been so for a good 10 years now. And within those 10 years, when I started living there, I was living off of, I was employed and living off Social Security. Then I became a full-time student at San Jose State, graduated, got a BA, and now I'm currently employed. I don't have Social Security anymore. I have, for the past 4 years, been attempting to find affordable housing, which has not been successful as of yet. And so hearing about this new proposal about new flats being built over in San Tomas, I thought that that's definitely something I would support, with the hopes that maybe one day I could transition from this place into the next, because that's always been a big goal of mine, you know, to move on. And I'm thankful that there's a lot of people with that consideration, and hopefully that will pass. And yeah, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Would anyone else like to speak? If so, please come forward. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ben. I think most of you know I live in Northside, but this is actually my childhood neighborhood. I've been through there a lot. I remember, I think the park used to be our pumpkin patch and Christmas tree area, and I think this used to be like where they put cars when they weren't on the dealer lot. I always have been in support of smart development and building up densities that can help us take care of our housing crisis and make sense. This does seem like the right density for that area. My number one concern when I heard about this was what Debbie brought up, which was that intersection is a hellacious intersection. I've walked across it. It is really bad, and particularly if you're adding significant residential there, I'd be really worried about it. At the minimum, I would think you'd want to make sure that you have a median where you can stop with a button to press. If I recall, the intersection does not have that right now. And if you have medium density development on one side and a park on the other side, that seems like that would be a minimum if you're keeping an at-grade crossing. The only other note I would make is that that park over there actually is one of the easiest parks to go park at if you're going to drive to it. It has a nice, I think there's particular dogs there. It's really nice. And so it's just something to be aware of. That is parking there, we would not want to get impacted. And just to the gentleman's point about having these projects talk about what they had in the community, I would say probably the most impactful thing is if that intersection is made safer, better in any way. That is a great thing to say, hey, look, this is really, because that is just not walkable. It just cuts through and it's basically two communities on either side.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Linda Nepper. Let's see. That is an intersection that I go through a lot. And so if I'm biking, I can make it. But I would suggest doing hawk lights or the flashing lights so that people who are going notice that. And yes, I know that that's not a City of Santa Clara thing. What is City of Santa Clara is the right turn versus left turn. And I would suggest a city thing would be timing the around. If you take a right turn and then go turn left on Scott and left on, let's see, Scott comes out onto San Tomas. So it's like a left, and onto the freeway if you're going. The other thing is parking. Some people who are in wheelchairs need the more space for the accessible to get a wheelchair in. And other people don't drive at all and can't, so it's like, okay. Let's see. And the dog park that is right across the street is only for small dogs, and it's not really a good dog park. And a lot of people have companion animals, so I would suggest that part of the community space that is allowed would be maybe for residents only, but for dog area also.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to go back now to the applicant to make any closing comments. I think there was, or anything you heard that you would like to respond to?
I would just
I
say
didn't
one
hear
thing.
too many questions in there. I think there
Yeah, I
was
didn't really hear many questions. I would just,
one question about what if you're not using all the parking spaces? How could you possibly reuse those parking spaces? I don't know if that can be answered at this time, but.
yeah, I mean, I think that we do need some guest parking. We have 10 guest parking spaces right now, but the spaces that aren't being used by residents. And I will add that the spaces will be assigned to residents. It's not just going to be open parking. It's assigned parking to the residents, but the spaces that aren't being used by residents would just be additional guest parking. I would just also point out that one of the mitigation and one of the measures in the mitigation and monitoring report is making improvements to the pork chop island that is there at San Tomas and Monroe Street. We're working with the city to figure out what those improvements actually are. So there's obviously the signaling, which is a county issue, but also just the physical improvements to that crossing. And so as a part of our project, there will be improvements there. We're just not exactly sure yet what they're going to look like.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Davis, do you have a question? Are you ready to close the
No.
public hearing?
That's what I wanted to do, and then make a motion. So I would like to close public hearing, please.
That's a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Please register your vote on that. All right, Councilmember Davis, that passes unanimously.
I'd like to make the motion. I just wanted to say that the applicant, you're extremely accommodating. I mean, I've never had anybody say, okay, well, look at this, we'll do this, It's usually a fight. But you have done everything that you possibly could have done to get this through. And there is a much needed it's been a long time. The first time that we tried to do this on that location, it was extremely controversial because there was something that was put out in the public that was not true, but it was hard to bring it back to where it needed to be. But now this was done very well. And I think that you did everything that you possibly could have done. Linda, thank you for bringing up the dog thing, because I know it is for small dogs, but maybe we can kind of look at that. If we do have people that are residents that will have the bigger dogs for service. I want to make the motion for staff recommendation because I think this is a good project. I think we're in much need of it, and I'm sorry to hear that it might be a little delayed, but to be open by 2022 makes me very happy. So I would like to make the staff recommendation for alternatives 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Do I have to read them, or can I just go? I have to read them. Thank you, City Attorney. Okay, bear with me, please. So staff recommendation, alternative 1, 2, and 3, 4. Number 1, adopt a resolution to adopt the mitigating negative deck and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the affordable housing project at 2330 Monroe Street. 2, adopt a resolution to approve a general plan amendment from right-of-way to medium-density residential for the property at 2330 Monroe Street. 3, adopt a resolution to approve a rezoning from single-family residential R1-6L to planned development PD to allow development of 65 rental affordable units, landscaped open space, surface parking and site improvements. And last but not least, number 4, adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the disposition and development agreement with Monroe Street Housing Partners LP for the development of 65 units of housing at 2330 Monroe Street, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all other agreements, including a ground lease, loan agreements, deeds of trust, promissory notes, and affordable housing amendments in a form consistent with the DDA and all other documents necessary to convenience to close escrow and implement the purposes and terms of the DDA. Thank you, and that was a mouthful.
Okay, motion and second on that. Could I ask if we are going to add any of the Planning Commission actions? Because I had, that the applicant had agreed to, that I think they agreed to, and I had
Some of
1,
them.
3, 5, and 6. Is that correct? I want to make sure the applicant has agreed to 1, 3, 5, and 6.
Yeah, that's correct, and there is a condition already included in the resolution that's in front of you for the community room availability.
Was that in the recommendation, the 20
Yes.
meetings?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was in there.
And then the other ones are incorporated into the project.
Okay,
So they're
very
all
good.
they're all in the action already.
All right, so I have a motion and a second for that. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you to the applicant and the neighborhood and everybody involved in this. This is really an awesome project. We're excited about it. Thank you to staff, too, for the excellent work and the reports on that. Okay, the next item we have is, moving right along here. Our next item is public hearing action on resolution amending the municipal fee schedule regarding new and increased alarm system and false alarm fees. Action on adoption of ordinance number 2012, amending chapter 8.40 of the city code. So I'm going to open the public hearing. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Mayor. Sue Reuter, Assistant City Attorney. I'm here with Wahid Kassam, Captain. We do not have a presentation for you today because the information that we would be placing in this presentation has already been given to you twice.
Is this our second reading of this?
This is the second reading of the ordinance. This is the public hearing on the fees.
On the fees, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So in your packet, both in the RTC and in the resolution, we have a table that lists the current fees and the changes. that table has been provided to the public in the 2 public meetings that we discussed at the last time at the introduction of the ordinance 2 weeks ago. So with that, I think our time may be better spent answering questions if you have any questions.
All right, do we have any questions from the council? I see no questions. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this? It's a public hearing. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello again. I first heard about this issue. It was posted the next door at the first public hearing of this. I had not actually heard much about it before. And looking at the numbers, there's some really stunning stuff in here. What I counted was that we are having a 99.4% false alarm rate, looking at the numbers that were provided, which is just really, really bad. And it's costing the city up to $1 million a year, just under $1 million a year, just for the false alarms, which is a big problem. And I think that this is something we looked at. However, I'd also note that this seems like a pretty big change in the structure of how we are going about trying to do cost recovery. There's a minor increase in the cost for false alarms, but it is a 400% increase in the fixed cost of an alarm system using an average of 10 years on an alarm system life. I'm not sure if this is the best way to try to change people's behaviors on hooking up systems that are generating false alarms, but it seemed like a pretty giant shift. And I looked at the most recent report, and it seems to be, it's not really clear if we're doing it this way because that's the vendor, that's their fee structure, and we're conforming to it, or if we're actually doing this as a way of trying to counter either cost recovery or counter or reduce false alarms. There just wasn't anything in there about how that was happening. The only other concern I had is that the term unregistered alarm keeps getting used. When it was first brought up on the Nextdoor communication, it was indicated that this was if someone connects to the city systems and produces alarms, then they would have to pay the costs, the fees, in order to be in the system. But if you were calling an alarm company and they were handling it without going through the city system, it would not, which makes a lot of sense to me. But then there was a link to one of the city pages that suggests that just having alarm systems that do automatic calls would be subject to the ordinance, as it is, not even with the modifications. And we're obviously adding an unregistered alarm fee, so that was kind of a concerning thing to leave undefined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll get some of those questions answered. Anyone else? Okay. Would you like to address some of those comments, Sue?
Sure. So some of these issues with regard to the increase in the fees, we have addressed in prior presentations and in our community meetings. And we wanted to point out that it's actually a combination of the things that the speaker mentioned. Yes, it's concern about drain on resources. Yes, it's a concern about generating revenue sufficient to address our needs operationally, to address the false alarms. And yes, it's also about preventing false alarms or reducing the number of false alarm calls in the future. That's driven by getting a good amount of updated information that we can rely on when we're in the process of dispatching people out to a call. So it's really a combination of a number of things, and it is in part of what our vendor is requiring in the contract. This is a contract that the police department can speak to a little bit more in terms of procurement and the vendor's position, but it is yes driven in part by what the vendor required, and the police department vigorously went back and forth with the vendor to get the what we thought was the best fee structure. And I also want to highlight what we discussed at the last meeting, which is the data collection, analysis, and revisiting the fee structure. This is our first pass at changing the fee structure. We're going to look and see what the data bears out in terms of the number of increases, the number of registrations that come out of the new ordinance, whether or not people are paying the annual renewal fee, whether the number of false alarms is going down. All of those kinds of issues we will be looking at to determine whether or not the fee structures could be structured in a different way to be more effective.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering that. Councilmember Davis?
I just wanted to make the motion, Mayor.
Well, this is a public hearing, so
Oh, we
anybody
do.
else want to speak on this? Okay, you want to close the public hearing first?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion second to close the public hearing? Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Yes, you have a
Okay, I'd like to
motion?
make the motion. Brian, have to read it again? It's the second reading, so. I can say staff recommendation? Okay, what the heck, all right.
By the time you did all that, you could have read
Yeah,
the
I
motion.
could have read the motion, you're right. Okay, I would like to make a motion for staff recommendation. Number 1, to adopt a resolution amending the 2019-20 municipal fee schedule to add new regulatory fees and amend existing regulatory fees related to alarm system and false alarm responses. And 2, to adopt number 2012 amending chapter 8.40 of the code, of the city code, false alarm regulation.
That had a New York accent on it.
Yes, it did.
For
I'm
some
sorry.
reason.
I'm getting
Okay.
tired.
So there a motion, is there a second? Motion and second. Any other discussion from the council? Okay, we have a motion and second. Assistant City Clerk, please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to staff and Sue and everyone in the police department, public development, yes. Okay. Next, we have item number 9, which is action on introduction of ordinance number 2011, amending chapter 18.76, architectural review of Title 18 zoning and making other clarifying changes. And I think this was a referral from an earlier meeting. We had a resident that asked that we include some additional information. So our Community Development Director, yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council, Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development. And as just noted, this is a proposed ordinance that would amend the city's municipal code, Title 18 zoning code. The architectural review procedures are set forth there. In the City Council previously considered it at the December 10th and January 14th City Council meetings, and at the 14th meeting, the meeting on the 14th, directed staff to return the next available hearing with an amended, revised version of the ordinance that would add requirements that second-story addition, projects with second-story additions or projects involving demolitions would also be subject to the requirement for a public hearing as part of the architectural review process. So the ordinance has been revised per that direction brought forward for you tonight. Because it's a substantive change to the ordinance, it's necessary to reintroduce the ordinance tonight. Should the council approve it tonight, the ordinance will return on February 11th for adoption. And with that, staff's available for any questions you might have.
All right, Councilmember Davis and then Vice Mayor Hardy.
Okay, so the direction that we gave was to add this because a resident said it was taken out of the ordinance, and we wanted it placed back in the ordinance. So you're saying that it is back in as written before?
Yeah, just to clarify, the city was operating under a sort of different system where there was policy direction in the past, and through the process with the Planning Commission, the community outreach, and so forth, what was crafted in terms of the ordinance didn't include that language that had been in policies, but not in the previous ordinance. So this is a new. The ordinance is new, and it's been revised now to include those two specific items that council directed to include.
I just wanted to make sure it was in there to make Mr. O'Keefe very happy. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hardy.
Thank you. As you know, I've been critical of this, but I liked Bob's recommendations. I would like you to look into your crystal ball and give me kind of a percentage with this requirements as is, what percentage would be going through staff only and what percentage would go to the Planning Commission?
So the question is, what percentage of
this
single-family
yes
remodel projects through the city? So it's difficult for me to say because we haven't really tracked data today. As you know, a number of projects go through an administrative process. This pretty closely parallels our current set of criteria. So if you're looking at compared to today, it would be generally the same number of projects that would be subject to a public hearing, maybe a little bit less with some of the refinements here, but not that dramatically different. I think overall, it's probably about half of our projects that go through a public hearing process versus our administratively, historically, but I don't really have numbers. That's just kind of an intuitive.
That's what I was hoping for, just kind of an overall idea with the second-story additions or projects involving demolition. Because my concern is that a second-story situation does impact neighbors very clearly. And I appreciate that they have that public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill, question?
Oh, well, yes, I just wanted to make sure, or that I'm understanding correctly. When you say public hearing, that may be a public hearing that's held by staff. It doesn't necessarily mean the planning commission is going to be there. If there's an appeal, it would go to the planning commission.
That's correct. So as presented previously, there would be an evening hearing, as sort of same time, location as was previously conducted under the committee process, but it would be a more formal hearing administered by staff. And then, any decisions made at that hearing could be appealed to the planning commission or city council. Single-family houses would be appealable to the planning commission, and then subsequently from the commission to the council. Commercial multifamily projects would be appealable directly to the city council.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, I don't see any other council questions. We can go to the public now, particularly Mr. O'Keefe. Get us your comments on these new additions. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. Bob O'Keefe. I'd asked for this to be pulled 2 weeks ago about the ordinance itself, and I think to answer Councilmember Hardy's question there, as of right now, none of them, and even the previous system, went to the Planning Commission, and like the director said, only on appeal. When I looked at this new ordinance, which of course I support because I asked for these two things to be added in, I looked at the last 6 months on the smart permit that's on the city website. Only 2 additional projects would be referred to the hearing process. So it's not a very big deal or something like that, but it is a big deal if it's your property or it's the property right next to you. So I want to thank the council for adding these 2. It gets almost the same exact requirements for the notification and the hearing to what we had before. I myself think that the review by the Planning Commission or the Planning Department is a good thing because there's some strict guidelines they will go by, the single-family resident guidelines, and then the laws. As what we had before was the best work that the architecture committee could do was sometimes they tried to mediate the problem a little too much and to make everyone happy. Now there's the owners know what they can build, when they can build it, and so can the residents. So I wholeheartedly accept this, and I want to thank each and every one of you for supporting it. And the city staff, city manager, attorney, and the rest of the staff. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. It just made this that much better. So, all right, any other member of the public want to speak on this issue? All right, is this a public hearing? I'm a little confused on the agenda. I'm not sure.
Not really, no.
Okay, so we don't have to close the public hearing?
No.
City attorney, okay, thank you. All right, is there a motion for the ordinance?
I'll make the motion. It's a short one. Introduce ordinance number 2011, amending chapter 18.75, architectural review of Title 18 zoning. What? 7.6, I'm sorry. Oh, just dyslexia. Okay, of 18 zoning of this code of the City of Santa Clara, California, and making other clarifying changes.
So there's a motion for the recommendation and a second. Is there any other discussion from the council on this? Seeing none? Please register your vote. And that passes on a 5-1. Okay, next we have action on written petition received from Santa Clara Valley Transportation Agency, VTA, regarding VTA's BART Phase 2 Transit-Oriented Communities Strategy Study and the Santa Clara Station Area Playbook. Okay, do we have, there's a request to put this on the agenda, for a future agenda. I was going to recommend, unless you want to make a presentation, I see you're all back there, hi. I was going to recommend that we refer this to our goal-setting session, which is Thursday, Thursday and Friday, so that we would be able to take this up a little bit sooner. I don't know what council feels about that. Because this is an action item just to put it on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just recommending that we bring it, city manager, does that make sense? That we bring it on Thursday and Friday?
There is a place on the agenda for referrals. In fact, I communicated with Councilmember O'Neill earlier about one referral that the council has already directed. So if you wanted to take the conversation up on Thursday or Friday, there's certainly a place on the agenda for us to put it under.
Well, maybe we should turn, I'm interested in doing that, but I mean, so maybe like what the process that we've been doing is to see if there's a majority of the council that's interested in pursuing.
Okay, even putting it on the
Yeah.
referral. Okay, is there an interest in doing that? Okay.
Right, or do you want to have?
No, that's fine.
So VTA staff is here if you want them to.
I asked if they want to come forward because the question before us is, do we even want to put this on the agenda? Okay. And you all sit in the back. It's a long walk. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. I'm Ron Golem. I'm VTA's Director of Real Estate and Transit-Oriented Development. With me is Jill Gibson, who's VTA's Planning Manager for BART Phase 2. I just want to thank you for letting us talk tonight about why we think it is worthwhile and important for the Council to consider the Santa Clara BART Station Transit-Oriented Committee Playbook. We started working on this nearly 2 years ago with a bunch of folks, and really what it was is an effort to understand how VTA can collaborate with the city and the community so that as BART comes to Santa Clara, we can not just have individual TOD buildings, but we can create transit-oriented communities. We can create a place that supports all transit modes, pedestrians, bicyclists, that creates a mixed-use environment, that creates a high-quality environment where people want to be, where they want to live, learn, work, create, and all sorts of activities. I want to thank city staff and community members who've helped us in this work to create the draft TOC playbooks. They are now available on our website. They are still draft. We've left them as draft so that we can get feedback from the council and community members and incorporate that in the final version. Just to provide a bit of context, the idea for the playbooks is that they are building on previous planning work for the station area, and they're focused on station area-wide strategies to maximize the outcomes and create a great place. They are not a plan. They are instead a way to really highlight the importance of looking at the station as a whole if we're going to maximize the benefits. Let me just talk about kind of from our perspective that we think this is something where the city's leadership is essential. If we're going to really maximize the creation of transit-oriented communities, it's the city's leadership that's going to help make that happen. No single developer is going to take on this diverse station area. It's not going to work on a project-by-project basis. We have to address land use, improvement plans, funding, phasing, and a whole bunch of considerations. So what we hope is to have an agenda item where this topic can be considered more fully. You can hear the information, you can provide direction. We did this last month with the City of San Jose based on City of San Jose staff review in the council, and that's very helpful for shaping the San Jose work. So we ask for the same opportunity to have that very thoughtful and important discussion and really have the City Council provide some direction about how to address this very important topic going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Davis.
I kind of like the idea of this going to goal setting, Teresa, to really kind of, it's the community that I want to hear with the playbook. I mean, something like this, the people, the residents are the ones that we have to sell it to, or, you know, what's going to happen. So I would rather bring it to goal setting and have some input from people that do attend these meetings. And like the city manager said, she has an opening for this conversation. So I would like to do it there and then see where that goes. And then it can be put on the agenda from that point, correct?
Right, I just want to clarify that there have been a couple of items and some referrals that the council asked us to bring back to the goal-setting session. Under that section, there's a title called Other Referrals, and so there wouldn't be a presentation, nor would we have our work completed for this. This does have workload implications, so the timing is really good to bring it up as a whole and as you consider all the other initiatives that you'll be considering.
Okay, that's where I think it needs to go, because I think that is the place right now. Just my opinion.
Anyone else have an opinion?
I have lots of opinions.
Well, I just want to make sure that we're going to be able to have enough time to have a meaningful discussion. I mean, it's a very important area. I mean, that's, that whole area is going to be very key, and it's going to have some relation to what we do with the downtown. It's not, it's a, there's obviously railroad tracks that run in the middle of it, but so Debbie, are you thinking that we just have some initial discussion about if we want to?
Well, we're
You
going to
get-
have the downtown people there, I'm sure, anyway. I mean, I think that our goal setting is well attended by people that have what they want to get done in the next year or so. So I just really think that we'd have probably a more robust conversation, because I know that when Kurt shows up, it seems to drive the force. Yeah, you. So I kind of think that just to get it out there, to have the conversation, and then have the chance to refer it back to and get it on an agenda.
We'd like the opportunity just to contextualize it within the larger workload that obviously will be coming through as part of the goal setting, as well as for staff to be able to just preliminarily speak to some of the workload issues, how it would potentially fit in or how it would not fit in, as well as just go through the San Jose report so that council has a full understanding of the action that San Jose took. It's with that as a whole that I think it's nicely timed. And then always, if you want to bring it back at the council, you still have that opportunity to bring it back on February 11th or the 25th.
Well, this actually gets it before us sooner rather than later, because otherwise, as you see, this really sort of straddles District 2 and District 5, of which we won't after February 1st have a representative of District 5. So either we hear it kind of now, or we kind of wait to see what we're going to do with that, because you want to get the input. So this will get it before us sooner and see really what it is, because I had a chance to look at this playbook, and some of the stuff in there was, accurate, and some was not so accurate in terms of land use and other things. So it's a big overall look of the properties in that area. So
City Manager, you think that we have enough time to be able to have some, to frame that conversation that you're talking about?
Well, for purposes of Thursday and Friday, it's goal setting, so we could speak just topically about what we're hearing about the TOC and the playbook and things of that sort. But in terms of really delving into the issues, then we would want to have the conversation around workload, scheduling, so that it's within the context of all the other items you may bring up, and staff has a better understanding of how the council wants us to proceed with its goals with your goals for 2020.
Okay.
Because here's the things we look at is that we bring all of these issues individually, but we have to look at it in the greater picture. And I don't see us going into super detail about it, but if the staff can bring us information on what this is going to entail on our end in terms of it, and how does it fit in with our other issues, I think it gets it before us a lot faster
Okay.
than not.
Yeah.
So,
Agree.
Okay, was there a motion to?
Well,
Is there a motion?
Staff recommendation.
Well,
Councilmember O'Neill?
Well, I'll make a motion that we refer this item to be included in the staff's discussion of the TOCs and in the context of the information from San Jose's action as part of our goal-setting process on Thursday and Friday this week.
Couple days from now. Motion second. Couple days from now. All right, is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this? Okay, we got a motion second. Vice Mayor Hardy,
No, Debbie Davis.
you raised your hand. Oh,
She was
I raised my
pointing.
hand.
please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Oh, wait, sorry, that passes unanimously, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the end of the week.
Thursday or Friday, right?
All day Thursday and all day Friday. Please attend, 8 to 5 both days.
There's lunch supplied.
All right, next, reports of members and special committees. I just got back from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so I haven't had a chance to prepare my report, so I'll prepare it for our next meeting, February 11th. Councilmember O'Neill?
My report won't be, so the mayor and I were able to attend the NCPA and CMUA Capital Day activities yesterday, which is the Northern California Power Agency and the California Municipal Utilities Association. So once again, we got some very interesting briefings on what is the legislative outlook and what may Sacramento have in mind for all of us who operate utilities and for all the investor-owned utilities. And so unfortunately, we're still getting a lot of fallout from what, the perhaps slightly negligent way that PG&E has conducted their business over the years. So some of the issues that we were really talking about were the continued areas of interest in wildfire mitigation, and also things like with the increasing climate goals, there's various legislative efforts to perhaps to compel us to procure power from certain projects and or centrally procure. And one of the things why Santa Clara has always kept the lights on is that we, on our own and within CPA, go out and procure power or generate power from a wide variety of sources, and that gives us the resiliency and reliability. So there was a lot of discussion about that, and we had opportunity to talk to some of the legislatures about some of one of the big fallouts from all of this, and as to be expected, is that our insurance costs are going up dramatically. I mean, this is one of the things, and so actually, and so some of the legislators had not realized that we are not able to get nearly as much coverage, particularly for anything related to wildfire. And the premiums have gone up between 2 and 3 times. And we had to switch companies.
If you can even get them.
Yes, and so like next year, they're saying we may not be able to get any wildfire, or any coverage in certain categories at all. So that was very interesting to go and have those discussions. And also just to give some of our legislators an idea of what we're working on, and to maybe get a little bit of their help in getting some of our projects that are green projects that, that we've had a little bit of resistance to help them make sure that we can get those renewable carbon-free projects advanced. So I think it was a very good use of time.
Thank you very much for that. Vice Mayor Hardy?
Yesterday, we had our BPAC meeting, and we had those 5 times a year, and it was only 6 hours.
A short one.
Yeah. I'm glad everybody's excited and passionate. I think I'm doing my job when someone suggested maybe they could have a meeting without the council member.
Oh.
That was fun.
Whoa.
So,
Karen.
So what I appreciated is the city attorney's office, Jonathan, came down and gave a very clear explanation about Brown Act violations and helping people to understand what you can and cannot do as a member of a committee or commission. And that was very, very important and helpful. And although some people said that it didn't apply to them, it does.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service on the commission, Karen. We appreciate it. Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
So now that you talked about SVP, I get to talk about the water. So I attended the Water Commission meeting, and that is my job through the regional meeting. And they're floating around, raising our water rates again, which will impact our CIP and our projects that we would like to do. And the other thing that they're floating around is a bond measure to take care of projects that they think they will not be able to fully fund. So more to come. And my BOSCA meeting, the snowpack is doing well, people. We have water. But if we keep it going, we're going to be a little bit better than what we were. And I also learned that in the north side, Kathy, one of our wells has reemerged. It's got water coming out of it. So the Valley Water was so happy to see that we have so much water in the ground that it regenerated or reinvigorated a well. So glad to hear that.
Is this the well underneath the person's unit?
This
That's
is
not, that's not one of our
no.
wells. I just want to point that
well,
out.
they're saying it is, but that's okay.
Well, it's not.
Okay. But they were very impressed with how it regenerated. So anyway, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to know you got more water in the north side. There's growth going on up there. So anyway, I attended the airport roundtable meeting on Wednesday afternoon, which was here in council chambers. Well attended as always, and we're very happy that after almost a year, have come up with a work plan for the roundtable to abide by and work through. And one of the issues has to do with airport expansion and growth. So needless to say, I addressed that issue because, as we know, San Jose is looking to, they haven't formally agreed to, they'll be doing it in March, but agreeing or having a council vote on the airport expansion. I understand it's going to the San Jose Planning Commission on March 3rd and then going to the City Council. So I just addressed some of the concerns that are on the minds of North Side residents and where we need to go forward as possibly as a city. The roundtable is not in a position to not support airport growth, but at the same time helps support us in whatever way they can. But anyway, it's something to an issue to be continued. But it was a good meeting as always, 3.5 hours. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on now to City Manager, Executive Director reports.
Just want to report out that this Thursday and Friday, we'll be having our goal setting at the Central Park Library. We'll start at 9 o'clock and until the council's pleasure. I also want to call a picture up.
9
and-
o'clock? We thought it was 8.
9 a.m. You should
Okay,
get
they put
there.
it on our calendars at 8. Okay, so
Even better, get there
Oh, we
for
have to come
coffee
early?
and-
Okay. All right.
I just want to show a picture and thank
here
the
we
council
go.
for your patience. I know at one point, Councilmember Watanabe asked for a hair wash, and it was incredible for staff and our Parks and Rec department to find the specialists that could clean St. Clair and make sure that she wasn't damaged during the process. And so if you didn't notice this, I was able to share with the council last week by email a picture of how lovely and clean she looks.
I don't think she's been cleaned in 50 years. Oh, gosh. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you so much. Yeah, she looks really great.
Just want to
Thanks.
also, last week, Mr. Michael Fisher came before the council. You referred us to speak with him. Staff did have a meeting with him on Friday. We're sorting through his issues. I would have liked to have had an update this week, but we'll bring back something as soon as we can sort through the many issues. And there is a downtown task force meeting next week on February 3rd, 6 o'clock, and a talk and tour the police station on February 6th from 7 to 9 p.m. at the police station. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much on that. That leads us to our adjournment. And we have 2 this evening. The first, I'd like to adjourn this meeting in memory of Joanne B. Delosier, long-term Santa Clara community member and mother of former Santa Clara City Council member Dave Delosier. Joanne B. Delosier was born on May 11, 1931 in Gilroy, California. In 1951, Joanne met and married the love of her life, Joseph Delosier. They settled down in San Jose, California, and were very active in the Santa Clara community. In 1955, they started Peterson's Insurance Agency in Santa Clara, and Joanne worked by Joe's side for over 50 years. Joanne was also den mother for Cub Scouts and team mom for her son's baseball teams. Joanne loved to travel, which included more than 30 cruises and safaris. She also loved music and boating, but most of all, she loved her family. Joanne passed away on December 10th, 2019. Joanne was preceded in death by her husband Joseph and is survived by her sons Phil and Dave, her grandchildren Robbie and Jamie, and her great-grandson AJ. Next, we'd like to adjourn in the memory of Sebastian D. Carrasco, former City of Santa Clara employee. Sebastian Carrasco was born on January 20th, 1925. As a young man, he enlisted in the U.S. Army and proudly served his country as a World War II veteran. After he returned home, he married the love of his life, Esther Delgado. Sebastian joined the City of Santa Clara in May 1960. He retired his position as street maintenance worker in April 1986 after 26 years of dedicated service. Sebastian enjoyed the outdoors, including hunting, camping, and vacationing with his family. He passed away peacefully on January 6, 2020, at his home of 65 years with his loving family at his side. He is survived by his children, Louise, Albert, and Ernest, 4 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren. I could ask if we could please adjourn in both their memories.
So moved.
Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. This meeting is adjourned.